Peanuts! Peanuts!
Those of you listening on MixLR, I apologize. Settings get played with every week here on Glenn Clark Radio, where I come in on the bat around on Saturday mornings and things just aren't the way they were the last week. So it wasn't streaming to YouTube. So we're going to do a take two.
That's fine.
Once again, Ryan Blake is here. Paul Valley, family emergency, wasn't able to make it in this morning. Ryan is here, as I said, the first time around, a lot more than he probably ever expected to be. He's gracious enough to be here again at last minute notice. Hopefully everything is working correctly on YouTube now. So, look, sorry about that. Things don't always go perfectly. Today is kind of a last minute thing. So, I hope everything goes as planned. But I'm still getting texts that we're not underway here. So we're gonna have to figure something out. But anyway, Ryan, we were just talking about last night's game.
Yeah.
For those listeners on MixLR, we'll kind of pick up where we left off. Kyle Gibson wasn't what we wanted last night. Obviously, only gave up 4 runs. That's not not the end of the world, but certainly could have done a lot better, especially in 5 innings against a team that's probably not going to win 60 games this year. Probably not going to win 50.
Yeah, the line itself is fine. 4 runs over 5 innings. He didn't walk anybody. He struck out 6. It wasn't a bad outing. It's just one of those where you're up against the worst offense in baseball. Your team spots you 5 early runs, and then a few more later on. You want to come out and see a guy like Gibson, a veteran, settle in and, save the bullpen a little bit. And, 5 innings is fine. He said himself in his post-game interview that, when he's in a situation like that against a not-so-good team and his offense is putting up runs, he wants to get 7 out of that. And he wasn't able to do that. He seemed a little disappointed in himself. Said he was going to go back and look at certain pitches that he could have executed better. He gave up a lot of hard contact with 2 strikes, which kind of leads you to believe he wasn't executing his pitches the way he wanted to.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
It's an outing that he would like to improve on, but overall, not bad. You just kind of want better in that circumstance.
You do want better in that circumstance, and they gave him what, $11 million, $10 million, and you look at that and you go, it's a little much for what Kyle Gibson has given you so far. But then again, they gave $3 million to the guy I just accidentally mentioned, Michael Givens. It doesn't look that bad of a signing. He's given you a lot of innings, and he's certainly stayed healthy throughout the whole year. What do you think his role is down the stretch here? Are they going to keep him as a starter? Do you think that a guy like who knows, a guy could come up from AAA, make an appearance, and pitch better than Kyle Gibson? He hasn't pitched very well to make me think that they're going to make him a starter all the way down through the playoff stretch. What's your thoughts there?
I don't know. I don't think his roster spot is in jeopardy by any stretch, but I'm not convinced that he's going to be the guy they turn to, game 1 of the ALDS. When if you had asked me a month ago, I would have said, yeah, based on, who he is, his playoff experience, Kyle Gibson, probably your game 1 starter in the playoffs. But at this point, I'm not so sure. Kyle Bradish has been excellent. Dean Kramer has been excellent. You've got Tyler Wells, who's going to come back in likely a bullpen role. Cole Irvin has held down the fort in the rotation. Grayson Rodriguez has arrived, and he looks absolutely legitimate. It's tough to figure that out when, in the playoffs you're probably going to only have 3, maybe 4 starting pitchers in your normal rotation. But I think Gibson has been huge this season, not only in terms of being an innings eater who has been able to save the bullpen in certain situations, but also I feel like I should be crediting him with a lot of the success of the young starters. He seems like an incredible clubhouse guy. He's very tight-knit with all these young guys that he's kind of helping to season as major league players. And I think that's a perfect role for him. In terms of when and where he's going to pitch down the stretch, I think the jury's still out on that. I don't think we'll know until we see maybe a September call-up and what they're going to do in terms of the bullpen.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the big drivers here. And by the way, I'm still getting texts that we're not good, but we're good. Like, I see it on YouTube. It's here. It's under Glenn Clark Radio. When it's not, it has the Pressbox title on it. There's nothing more I can do here. So you can go to pressbox.com and watch us there. We might just be audio only today. I'm not sure what the deal is. things seem to be working perfectly on my end, so I'm not sure what the problem is. But we are on audio only, so if you go over there and listen to us, that can be your decision. Gibson wasn't great, as we just mentioned. Let's move on to Gunnar Henderson. Another huge home run last night. Pulls a breaking ball, second deck. Looking like the Gunnar Henderson that was the number 1 overall prospect in baseball. He's been really good. His average is still around 240, which when I saw that last night going into that game, I was just kind of wondering, how is that even possible? Because it seems like for the past 4 months, he's been so hot, so good. And I'm genuinely confused about how that's so low. But the power numbers are there. 20 home runs now. He's been driving in a ton of runs. A consistent middle-of-the-order bat, which is, I guess, really what you can ask for from Gunnar Henderson. And he's been probably better than you expected, given that the first month was really rocky for him. But last night, again, kind of gets the team going, especially early on. Base hit in the first inning, and then, goes yard a couple innings later. He's just been huge for the team. And, having that home run last night and doing what he's been able to do over the past few weeks, how important is Gunnar Henderson to this team right now? What would they be if Gunnar Henderson wasn't the guy right now? Because it seems like there aren't a lot of other guys who are having that kind of production.
Especially lately. I mean, I think I saw that Gunnar's batting average post All-Star break was like under 200, which seemed crazy to me because it seems like he's been so good. But last night was excellent. Base hit in the first inning off a lefty. He's been hitting lefties a little bit better as of late. But he's been huge. Santander has been struggling a bit. Cedric Mullins hasn't really been himself. Austin Hayes has struggled since the All-Star break as well. And, Brandon Hyde flip-flopped Gunnar and Adley at the top of the lineup, have Adley hitting leadoff now, Gunnar hitting second. And so far it looks pretty good, especially with Adley's role as a leadoff hitter. He's been fantastic. But, Gunnar, it was both sides of the ball last night for me. He goes 3 for 5, home run, 3 runs batted in, and his defense was spectacular, as it always is.
No doubt.
And his defense, even at the beginning of the season, looked like it was going to be a little suspect.
That's true. And Stan had mentioned when he'd been on, he's on every week, and he had mentioned quite a few times that there had been issues with him tracking pop-ups. And I said a few weeks ago that I had noticed that as well. He looked just a little uncomfortable. And I started to feel like, these past maybe month or so, he's been a lot better in every facet of the defensive game.
Yeah, he really looks solid defensively, and he's a guy that's been playing a lot more shortstop lately with the struggles of Jorge Mateo and him not being a regular anymore, which thank goodness for that. But, Gunnar's been great, whether you put him at third or short. You could throw him at second. He'd flash some leather over there. But, yeah, Gunnar, I mean, he's a presence on the field that I think other teams are really starting to take notice and say, oh, this guy is going to be a problem for quite some time. Because when you look at his prospect pedigree, it was always hitting in defense. It was always both sides of the ball. And then he comes up, the defense is a little bit suspect.
Right.
He's not hitting for a good batting average for a good month and a half, even 2 months into May. But it's all coming together for Gunnar Henderson, and man, it's beautiful to watch. Yeah,
it is beautiful to watch. Another number 1 overall prospect, Adley Rutschman, who was probably more hyped than Gunnar Henderson coming up. I would argue that. Wouldn't you say Adley was a little more hyped?
I think so, yeah.
Hasn't quite lived up to maybe the power that we expected so far, but last night, kind of showed why. I thought he framed excellently last night. That's where I'm getting at here. I thought there were a lot of Kyle Gibson pitches, especially the one in the first inning. There was a sinker that I believe was it was the leadoff hitter. He threw a sinker, it was a little bit high, and Rutschman pulled it back in and made it a strike. It was excellent. And that's what Adley Rutschman has consistently done in the time that he's been here. He makes pitchers better. He's made Kyle Gibson probably a lot better. You look at again, as we talked about before, the transition of Gibson from Phillies Gibson to Orioles Gibson. It's been a lot better. And a lot of that could be because of Adley Rutschman. What do you think of him in this leadoff role? Are you still buying it? I mean, you just talked about how they flip-flopped them. I'm kind of in the middle on it. Like, I don't love it. I don't hate it either.
It's weird because I loved Gunnar as the leadoff hitter. I think he settled in nicely to that role when Mullins was out for an extended period. I think Adley, it's still a little weird to me to see the catcher hitting leadoff. It doesn't happen often. We've seen it with Joe Mauer with the Twins. JT Realmuto has done it for the Phillies. It's a little strange to me. I did like Gunnar at 1 and Adley at 2. I thought that was what we're going to see for the next decade. But I don't know. Adley's been great as a leadoff hitter. And on the defensive side of the ball, it's hard to quantify sometimes what a catcher means to his pitching staff.
Right.
I think we have seen the impact that he has made. But for a guy who has had, as a batter, who has had the most pitches out of the zone called strikes on him, he certainly seems to do the same a lot for his
Right.
his battery mates.
Yeah, he's done a lot. And, we talk about the Orioles having a complete turnaround last year when Adley Rutschman took over. They had a losing record and then a winning record from there on out when Adley Rutschman took over. He's made a big difference. And, it's been great to watch. And last night, again, I feel like he had a really significant difference in them winning that game. But Gunnar Henderson, again, probably the star here. Now, Cedric Mullins, he's back after his IL stint. Aaron Hicks is still on the IL. It seems like it's kind of a day-to-day thing for Aaron Hicks right now. We might see him back at some point soon. Or did they bring him back off the IL? Am I incorrect?
Hicks is off the IL, but yes. he tweaked something in his first game back.
Correct.
And we hasn't appeared since then.
Right. We only saw him for a few innings, so he's still almost more or less on the IL because you're right. He's just back there, sitting on the bench and not really providing anything at the moment. Do you agree with the move of optioning Colton Cowser? I mean, it seemed like the move they had to kind of make. Ryan McKenna also back down.
Yeah, I don't love it, but I get it. I think it was the right move in the sense that Cowser seemed uncomfortable in the bigs at this point.
Yeah.
And as much as I'd like to say, let him figure it out in the majors, like they did when Adley wasn't hitting at first, like they did when Gunnar wasn't hitting at the beginning of this year. Ryan Mountcastle last year had a terrible April, and then there was talk about maybe optioning him, and then he turned on the Jets. I would have liked to see Cowser work it out at the big league level, but at the same time, when you're in a pennant race and you're 2 games up on the Tampa Bay Rays and you're trying to close out a division championship, I get wanting him to get a little more seasoning down in the minors, and hopefully he's able to come back up in September and make an impact. He had a home run yesterday for Norfolk.
Right. I think and that was a big home run, by the way. He absolutely destroyed it. I think Colton Cowser is going through the same kind of thing that, like you mentioned, Gunnar Henderson was, and then Grayson Rodriguez did as well, where you come up and maybe things are just weighing a little heavily on you, and you're not the guy you once were. Colton Cowser is going to be a Major League player. Yeah. I'm extremely confident in that. I believe he's going to be a very good Major League player. He looked lost, like you mentioned. He had no plate discipline, which is something that he hasn't had as much of as I thought. When he came up first out of Sam Houston State and the Orioles drafted him 5th overall, I said, this is going to be one of the best plate coverage, plate discipline guys in the major leagues. And he really wasn't that. Struck out a lot in AAA, a lot more than I ever could have thought he would have. And then coming up, he kind of did the same thing. Paul and I noted a lot that he would chase the outside up and away pitches. He didn't really look comfortable at all. Things just didn't really work the way we expected it to. So when you're in the middle of a playoff race, it's probably the right move. Now, if Aaron Hicks is the right guy, I'm not so sure of that either.
Right.
I don't really buy it. I mean, you saw the first 3 weeks, Aaron Hicks was unbelievable. He looked like 2017 Aaron Hicks, where he hit all those home runs and he stole all those bases, and he was actually a very good player, and he was a great center fielder back then as well.
Yeah.
He hasn't been that guy since the first 3 weeks of Orioles baseball he played. And he's been more of the 210, 220 hitter, the guy who's not going to get on base at a super high clip. He does take good at-bats, I'll give him that. Mm-hmm. But I don't really know what Aaron Hicks gives you either. Maybe he's a good veteran in the locker room. I don't know. I don't have the insight there. I can't tell you he's doing incredible things there. But clearly Brandon Hyde likes him, and that's, I guess, works for something. It clearly works for Ryan McKenna. But I do think the Orioles are going to get something out of him at some point. I just don't know what.
Yeah, it's hard to figure out. He definitely seems more comfortable over here than he was in New York, which I guess good on us. But yeah, I don't know. He was claimed off waivers, and then, or I guess I don't even remember how we got him. Did we sign him as a free agent? Did he clear waiver? I don't know.
He was signed as a free agent. Yes, okay. He was a major league free agent.
Because I know the Yankees DFA'd him, and then the Orioles ended up getting him. But
yeah,
when Mullins was out, right? They signed him to replace Cedric Mullins while Mullins was dealing with his groin injury.
Correct.
And was on the IL.
Correct.
And during that time, Hicks was fantastic. He did exactly what the Orioles needed him to do. He exceeded any of our expectations. And then Mullins came back. Hicks' role was a little bit switched up, and he started to not hit as much.
Right.
And when that's the case, it's a shame to see, but at the same time, Mullins was back. So we didn't need that Hicks production. Mullins goes down again. Yes. Hicks becomes the guy again, and he hasn't done it the second time around. So
yeah.
I don't know what Hicks' role is going forward. I would like to see Colton Cowser back in the majors at some point. I would like to see Heston Kjerstad in the majors at some point this season. And when that comes around, I'm not sure there's a role for Hicks.
We're going to get to Heston Kjerstad in Orioles banter. We're going to get there eventually. Because Heston Kjerstad, I think, is a really big conversation piece for what happens down the stretch with this team. You saw the Kevin Brown debacle kind of in a way, Paul and I talked about this in depth where we don't know if it really obviously the players hear about this. We don't know how much it weighs on them. We don't know how much it weighs for their owner to be chastised like it is right now in the media. And that seems to kind of have passed. And now you go on to a series in Oakland where you hope you can take 3 wins and get out of there. And that would be excellent for the Orioles to do. But I think you're looking at this team and you're saying, after what happened with Kevin Brown, after what happened with John Angelos not signing the lease, all of that, there was a bunch of bad Orioles media going around. The team has the chance to turn it around and make it about the team again. And right now, they go out, win 9-4 last night. They have a chance to make it about the team again. And that's going to be a really big thing, especially as they start to come home in the next few weeks, play more home. They've got to make this about the Baltimore Orioles being the best team in the American League and being the best team in the American League East once again. That was the story throughout the entire first few months of this team until John Angelos started doing John Angelos and we started hearing about him more. But I think a guy like Cedric Mullins coming back, you saw the catch the other night, incredible catch, and then you saw him hit a homer in the same game. He looks like the old Cedric Mullins, and that's going to be really big for them down the stretch. We talked about Adley Rutschman, of course, being the Adley Rutschman of usual, just doing what he does. We're going to get to the bullpen a little bit later, but I want to pose this question to you, and this is going to lead into our Orioles banter discussion. How concerned are you right now about what the Orioles bullpen looks like? How concerned are you about the health? How concerned are you about how much ammo they have in AAA to bring up and possibly reinforce? What are you thinking along these lines? Because I don't think it looks promising.
I'll be honest. So the way it looks right now, I'm not thrilled. With that being said, I think Dylan Tate's out of the equation now. Michael Givens out of the equation now.
Yes.
DL Hall very much could be in the mix. John Means very much could be in the mix. Tyler Wells very much could be in the mix. One of the guys who's not going to be in the postseason rotation is going to be in the bullpen, whether that's Kyle Gibson,
yes,
Dean Kramer, who knows. Fuji is a little concerning.
Undoubtedly.
You can tell by his first 3 pitches of an outing whether or not it's going to be a disaster.
You absolutely can. You absolutely can.
And so, but when he's on, he is disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob Webb looks like an awesome pickup at this point.
Yes.
Yennier Cano has not been quite the same, but has looked a little bit better as of late after a stretch where he had like a 340 opponent batting average over a couple months.
What do you make of him pitching last night? Is that a doghouse move by Brandon Hyde, or is that what is that?
I didn't think much of it, to be honest, but it could be.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a little weird using the guy that you've used as your setup guy in mop-up role. Not really mop-up role. I don't think that's the word for it. But you're ahead 5 runs.
Yeah.
It's a little weird.
Didn't they use Webb in the 8th too, though?
I believe they did, but also Webb it's early on for him. He just just made his first few appearances. They probably don't want to throw him into a situation that's going to be incredibly tough for him so far. But then again, I don't know. I think that's a little bit of an odd move to see Cano out there in that late in a game against the Oakland A's when you're up by 5 runs. It's a little odd.
Like I said, I didn't think much of it at the time, but now that you say it, it does seem a little weird. But look, Mike Baumann is kind of hit or miss as well. I think overall he's put together the type of year that gives you confidence in him going forward. But this is his first true test out of the bullpen, and he has been put in some bigger spots. Ciano Perez, I was clamoring for his DFA for several months this year. He's looked fantastic lately.
Yeah.
So in terms of the look, you don't know what you're going to get on any given night. You don't know if a guy's going to have it or not. But I think that when you're starting to put together what the bullpen is going to look like in the postseason, I think there's going to be 2 or 3 more guys who are not currently pitching out of the bullpen,
right,
who are going to make an impact, going to be able to give you a little bit of length if your starter starts to struggle early.
Yep.
You could bring in a DL Hall or a John Means for 3 or 4 innings. You could do the same with Tyler Wells. And Wells, in his career, has been awesome out of the bullpen. So as weird as it looks right now, it doesn't look like a postseason bullpen. I think come postseason time, it very much could.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And by the way, Ryan, we have to get Stan the Fan Charles on the line. So you're going to tell us, as I throw this paper to you right here, about the latest edition of Press Box. I'm going to get Stan the Fan Charles on the line.
I would be happy to tell you about the latest edition of Press Box, which is available now. On the cover, Bo Smolka dives into what's next for Lamar Jackson after receiving one of the biggest contracts in football history. Is he ready to take the Ravens to the next level with a new offensive coordinator and new wide receivers? Also inside, we look at what new football coaches Brian Newberry and Pete Shinnick bring to Navy and Towson, respectively. And we meet players from the college football and soccer programs around the state. Pressbox is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always find the entire edition as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that. As I promised, we have Stan the Fan Charles on the line. Stan, good morning. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. As I mentioned to you off air, we have Ryan Blake in with us today. Paul had a family emergency, so Ryan is gracious enough to sit in with us. So you guys are, I believe, familiar with each other. You've done this a few times.
How you doing, guys?
Stan, we were just talking about the bullpen. It's a pretty interesting thing right now. The Orioles, we're both a little worried about them running out of gas at the end of the day, given that they don't have a ton of reinforcements. Jacob Webb comes in. He's looked pretty good. What's your early take on Jacob Webb so far?
I like him. I had him earlier in the season on my fantasy team. Picked him up 1 week and had him for about 3 weeks, and liked most of what I saw. But the Angels weren't really that good, and I got rid of him. I think he's a very solid pickup, much more consistent than Brian Baker. You know,
that's for sure.
To me, was definitely the weakest link. You know, again, I've made this point a few times. Brian Baker was a serviceable major league pitcher.
Yes.
On a team that was rebuilding. But when you really need to win games, to win a division, to win series, and the whole enchilada,
sure,
he just wasn't up to speed. It will remain to be seen whether Jacob Webb is, but I think he's a much more solid guy than Baker, and that was sort of the place that I think he fits. And he may, in fact, end up moving, just under Cano. So,
sure.
Because Bauman now is fading from my circle of trust.
Well, where is Cano in your circle of trust then? Because you see him pitch in the ninth inning, last night. A guy that you probably don't expect to see out there. Is he in Brandon Hyde's doghouse? What's going on with that? Ryan and I were a little bit confused. We didn't maybe think so much of it, but when you look back at it, it's a little odd to see Cano out there.
I didn't think it was odd last night. I thought it was the perfect opportunity with
a
significant lead. There was not a save opportunity where there was a crisis. And I think what you saw was what you would get if he had that much rest. I think he was pitching on 4 days rest there.
Yes, yeah.
And his stuff played a lot more electric last night to me. I mean, it had a lot more movement. Now, I'm not saying we got the luxury of giving him 4 days off, but I think he was in that overuse pool, that Brandon had gotten.
No doubt.
Comfortable with him, and maybe a little too much so to the point that he's overused. But then again, remember that after Cano was Baker and Bauman, really, and Perez also really has chosen the right time to come back and pitch. Now, again, we were facing the Oakland A's last night.
Yeah.
Okay? but the Oakland A's have beaten a few teams recently with some late comebacks.
Yep, no doubt.
I thought the three of them last night gave us a good reason to believe that this bullpen can hold up, and it should only get a little stronger with the return eventually, in the next week or 10 days of probably Tyler Wells.
Stan, I mentioned this to Ryan earlier in the show, but I thought Adley Rutschman had a really good game overall last night. I saw him frame pitches better than I've seen him frame pitches in a while. Had a base hit. There's some things I thought that Adley Rutschman did last night that were really good. How much does Adley Rutschman mean to this team right now, and how much can he really get hot down the stretch to really propel this team into the playoffs? Now, his average is down under 270. What can he do to make this team that much better?
Yeah, I mean, he's facing, he's a young guy, so it's not like, classic fatigue, but he's probably hit a bit of a wall. Although, I don't know how many games these kids played in college and then went right on to things like the Cape Cod League. So I don't know how many seasons he's played 150, 160 games.
Sure.
but there was definitely some fatigue in his game, I'd say.
Yep,
That
no doubt.
exposed him a little bit. And that's with Brandon being very careful at how he uses him,
Yep.
And I think it was a really good decision to go out and acquire James McCann,
Sure.
who I think we've gotten the full scope of watching him all year. He's a really solid number 2 catcher. There's probably not a better number 2 catcher, in the game. Maybe that kid Austin Barnes on the Dodgers is
Sure.
pretty darn good too. But Brandon has had the luxury. I think he's played him at DH like 50 games. I think this year, something like that. So that's going to keep him fresh, and his numbers, actually, offensive numbers, are better when he DHs.
Right.
So the catching thing does take something out of players.
Yep.
But last night, I agree. I thought he had an excellent game. Took that extra base.
Yep.
Right in front of the left fielder. Guess he must have read the scouting report that Kemp is a little slow mechanically, and his arm isn't that strong.
Yeah.
And he took the extra base, made that really nice foul pop catch in, I think, the 7th inning. And he played a real nice game last night.
On base 4 times, you can't complain. Drew a walk like he usually does. So you cannot complain about that at all. Now, Stan, you mentioned James McCann, and it seems like James McCann has been one of the better hitters since the All-Star break in the major leagues, and that's actually true. With a minimum of 20 at-bats, he's up there at the top with WRC+. James McCann, is he actually going to get legitimate playing time where he's not just a backup catcher and he can actually be in the lineup as a piece of force?
Well, I think, and I think there are things, this is no knock at Adley as a catcher. I think there are things that Brandon really likes, and you don't hear any grumbling from pitchers about working with him. His arm strength may actually be better at throwing out runners, I think, than Adley's.
Yeah.
But I think if there were one area I think the Orioles need to improve for next year, and it's pretty tough to do it in the middle of the season, is they have got to get better at and Cano and Bautista are probably the 2 biggest guys that really need to work on holding runners a little bit. And I know in this day and age it's hard because you can only throw over twice before you get called for a balk if you don't throw the guy out. So it's a little tougher than it used to be.
Yeah.
But too many times we see guys steal second easily, and then you see them steal third even easier.
Right.
Right. I think that we need to fortify that defensive part of the game.
I would agree. But Stan, let's talk about Kyle Gibson for a second, just to end our pitching discussion a little bit here with the guy that gave up 4 runs last night, gave up 9 runs his last time out, but he did throw 7 innings of 3-run ball just 3 starts ago. He does have 13 quality starts. He has as many starts allowing 4+ runs as allowing less than 2 runs, which that's 10. He's been good in a lot of spaces, and Ryan and I talked about it. I think for $11 million, he's been a little bit better than we all could have expected. It was kind of a little bit of a weird thing when they signed him because they got rid of Jordan Lyles, and we thought, hey, this might be the same guy. Are you seeing Kyle Gibson start to turn into the bad Kyle Gibson after 2 outings in a row that just weren't really the way we wanted them to go?
That's a really good question. I've never quite understood his career. And again, I hate to always pull out of my pocket the fantasy baseball thing. I've loved Kyle Gibson since he was a prospect. And he's always tempted and teased, and he's been more sour than good. But I got to tell you, I think on this team he really works.
Okay.
I found him to be. I used to stand. I don't go to the locker room a lot. I don't try and befriend players. Never have. Usually wait till their careers are over when I can sort of see myself as a friend.
Sure.
But I used to stand at the locker when we interview Jordan Lyles at the end of games last year. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what the hell he ever said. He would talk in circles, and he would never end his comments. I have found Kyle Gibson to be one of the more thoughtful,
Yeah.
I really, really like him, so that makes it less likely I want to criticize him. Obviously, there's parts of his game where he's inconsistent. I'm gonna talk it off that you're gonna get some bad Kyle Gibson over the course of 30 starts, but I think the club is pretty lucky to have him. And while on the face of it, he doesn't match up particularly well if we were playing against a Tyler Glass now or
No.
a Garrett Cole in the playoffs. There's something about him I still like and feel confident with him. His durability is not particularly fantastic in a given game, but he hasn't missed a start yet this year, and there's something to that. And I think he's been a good leader for the young pitchers on this staff.
Stan, how likely, though, is it that if Gibson keeps turning in some bad starts, regardless of his leadership, regardless of everything he does off the field, is it possible we can see him in a bullpen role and Cole Irvin ends up becoming more of that starter and that guy who can actually help them down the stretch in the playoffs? We saw Cole Irvin go out there last time, throw 5 innings. He got the win against a Seattle team that's definitely a pretty good offense, a lot of good hitters on that team. They won 1-0. Where are you feeling about that? Could Kyle Gibson go to the bullpen? Cole Irvin takes that spot?
I don't see that happening this year. No, I don't see that happening. I'm just happy that Cole Irvin has. I'll be honest with you. I've watched many general managers. There was a certain panic about what they did with Cole Irvin, where Cole Irvin was sort of allowed to go out and talk to the press the night he was being sent down, that they were conferring back in the office. And he was talking about how he felt he had made some advances and he looked forward to his next start.
Yep.
And then you get home and you hear that he's been optioned out to the minor leagues.
Right.
And it was almost like Mike Elias was. I almost felt like he was embarrassed by the trade in some way, shape, or form. And they went, "Geez, we didn't realize he was this bad." And I've watched Cole Irvin pitch for a couple of years. He doesn't light up a radar gun, and he's not a dominant pitcher, but I thought he was a more than serviceable starter, and with the improved defense and the left field wall, I thought he was going to pitch well as an Oriole.
I agree.
And it's almost like they short-circuited his season, and I think whether they came around out of need, out of necessity, but he's clearly back in the good graces of the organization right now. But I think thinking he would be used in kind of the number 1, 2, or 3 role, I don't see it this year.
So it's interesting you mentioned that trade because it looked like an okay trade at the time. Darell Hernandez was probably never going to play as an Oriole given the fact that they have Jackson Holliday, Gunnar Henderson, the rest.
Right.
But you look at Darell Hernandez and what he's done in the minors, and he's looking at a call-up right now. He's looking at a major league call-up. Between AA and AAA, he's slashing 340, 399, 496. He's already hit 8 home runs. He's stolen 12 bases. He's already walked 37 times, and OPS of almost 900. The numbers are really, really good. For an Oakland team that needs really every guy they can get at this point, they've already called up a lot of their top prospects early on in the season. Does this look worse to you now that you see Darell Hernandez being as good as he has?
Well, I never disliked Hernandez or thought he was, with Irvin, what you got was also a guy that you have a couple of years of control over.
Yes, yeah.
Which I think is very valuable, and I think
Definitely.
he'll slot in. I think he'll slot in as long as he finishes the season on a kind of an up note. I think he figures to be here for another couple of years. So I don't have that chalked off as a bad trade.
Okay.
Both sides should win, and I think Hernandez, if we didn't have Jackson Holliday, I don't think they make that trade.
That's probably true.
In front of them and Henderson in front of them, I'm not sure they make that trade. But they had so many middle infield prospects. I think they were comfortable saying, hey, we may be giving up the better talent, but we got some, in other words, Cole Irvin next year will probably make, am I right, Zach, like $3 million this year, next year?
It won't be much. No, yeah, won't be much.
Yeah. So I mean, he's very affordable.
Yep.
He's proven to be a really good soldier. I mean, you could have seen a guy really pout. He's handled this with a great deal of grace and humility. I think he scores a lot of points as a teammate. I think he's been really another good addition to the team.
I think so too. It seems like we talked to.
In other words, most people we'd leave it there. I'd love to talk to Mike Elias and say, what the heck happened? Why were you so down on him as a talent, or was it something you wanted him to work on down there? He's never knocked the fact that they sent him down there.
No.
So he's good to me. I like him.
I filled in on GCR about 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and we talked to Cole Irvin. And he seemed like a genuine, very good guy, very good clubhouse guy, and seems like someone who could lead the young guys along and certainly mentor a lot of young pitchers. And maybe he's done a lot for Grayson Rodriguez. Ryan has a question for you.
More of a comment, actually. I love Darryl Hernandez. I think he's going to be a good ball player. The fact of the matter is he was blocked here, and the Orioles need a Cole Irvin more than they needed Darryl Hernandez at this point. And don't forget, the Orioles also acquired a 6'7" right-handed pitcher who is holding his own right now in Aberdeen. So another guy who could be a role.
What's his name again? I forgot.
Kyle Verbitsky.
That's right.
He's 24 years old, so a little old for Aberdeen. But
he made that trade. He was the one who made that trade palatable for Elias.
Yes. Yes.
Giving up a better. I'd forgotten about him. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that seems like that could be an add-in, and probably for the Orioles, that was more of the headliner of the deal. And Cole Irvin, is probably the guy that can throw innings and eat innings, and that's what they expected out of him. And that's kind of what he's done. And like you said, Stan, they sent him down kind of early in the season, probably for a reason that we will never really know, to figure something out. And he went down quickly, came back up, and he's looked a lot better. So that's a good thing for the Orioles. Now, Stan, I want to talk about the outfield, specifically Austin Hayes, Anthony Santander. Hayes made the All-Star team. Since then, he's been pretty abysmal. We saw the catch a few weeks ago that was in Toronto that saved the game, and he looked like one of the best catches we've seen all year, but the offense certainly hasn't been there for Austin Hayes. And Santander has been arguably worse in the second half. We've seen him really fall off there. So what's your take on the outfield? And you have guys like Heston Kjerstad waiting in the wings. Colton Cowser's down there as well, hit a massive home run last night. What's your take on the outfield right now, specifically the corners?
It's really interesting. You're asking about the outfielders, but it leads me back to if a month ago we were talking about the most disappointing guy, it would have been Ryan Mountcastle.
Yeah.
For the whole season, and now suddenly you're saying, wait a minute, is this the real Mountcastle,
right,
or is what we saw? I really question now whether he was playing, even though I haven't been his biggest fan all along. I've never really jumped out and barked about him because his power really did play. His pitch selection, though, is just absolutely terrible. His swing decisions.
Yeah.
But getting back to those outfielders, so now I don't know. Again, Austin Hayes has been a player that has kind of like what I said about Kyle Gibson. He's teased.
Yep.
I thought he had finally gotten to the mountaintop this year. He's got his confidence, his game. He's fully assured of himself as a major leaguer. And then from the time he was hitting 327, and I believe for 1 or 2 days was leading the American League in hitting. I think he's hit about 202 since then.
Right.
Which has been about six weeks. Again, it seems to have started with a small injury. But it seems like it's always something that drops him down a couple pegs,
Yeah, no, that seems to be the case.
At the end of the day, I think he's probably at most like a 260 to 265.
Yeah.
17 home runs, 65, 70 RBIs. He's not, plays a good defense. I think his base running instincts are terrible. I think he's a terrible base runner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with all of that. And then you look at Jorge Mateo still being on this team. He's still there for whatever reason, and once in a while he does things that are great. I mean, you look at Jorge Mateo, he'll get on and he'll steal 2 bases and he'll score a run. there's some things that have gone really well for him, but most things have gone really badly lately. Do you expect, for any chance, that Jorge Mateo is on this playoff roster?
I still think there's a good chance he's on the playoff roster. I think he's a weapon in a really close game, and we saw that slide that he made the other night. Was that against Seattle?
I believe so.
Slide home? Yeah. He just look. His days as a first stringer are clearly over.
Yeah.
But I think the club has been smart not to overreact to how bad his offense is, because he does bring some other things to the table. It's unfortunate. Yeah. I think he got caught up as soon as he became a utility guy. Maybe there's something mentally he needs to address about himself, because his defense, that double clutch in Philadelphia, there was a missed ball one day that he could have made, and the plays that he's muffed defensively and short, I think were plays that if he was playing every day, he wouldn't have muffed those plays. He's got to understand his role.
Yeah.
I do have to question a night that I didn't make a big deal of it, but when Brandon kept him in center and had McKenna in the game and right, I probably would have had McKenna in center field just because of the lack of experience. And Brandon, while Brandon's never going to criticize a player publicly, he made the point, and I'm not sure that he's right, but he said there's not too many players that even get to that ball, the one that he sort of leaped for when I don't even think he had to leap for. I think the athleticism gave him the positioning to make a rather easy play, and he complicated it by jumping.
Stan, I have a question for you, and it's more of an I don't know the answer to this type of question. That game, that's a decision that I was questioning as well. Brandon Hyde had been ejected earlier in that game. Freddie Gonzalez taken over as the coach. Is Brandon Hyde in those situations still giving input from the clubhouse, or was that Freddie Gonzalez's call to leave Mateo in center field?
That's a great question. I believe that Brandon still is running the team.
Okay. Yeah, because that was an interesting one.
I don't know that there's some type of provision. That's a good question to ask Brandon sometimes. It's really thoughtful of you to ask, because I've never really pinned anybody down on it. But I would imagine in this day and age, he's back in his office and he might text Freddie.
Yeah.
Like say, hey, no, leave Mateo out there, or switch them or something like that. But it's possible that if he's not allowed to make those kind of things, and I have a hard time believing that he doesn't. That maybe it was an oversight by Freddie. But to me, and I don't think McKenna's a great center fielder, but I think he would have made that play that night.
Well, Stan, you have to assume at this point, with Aaron Hicks now off the injured list, but as Ryan and I said, not really off the injured list. He's still kind of sitting on the bench doing nothing. But Cedric Mullins is legitimately back off the injured list. You have to imagine the Jorge Mateo center field situation is just over with, and that experience probably not going to last much more. He made a botch in center field, and I think that was kind of the end of it. I would hope that's the end of it.
I think the timing of it was more that Mullins and Hicks were right there, ready to play again. I think they're looking for versatility. If you're in the playoffs and all of a sudden Mullins re-injures that abductor, I think you'd like to have the options of who you're going to put out there. And I think he botched that ball. There's no question about it. But I don't see it impossible, given an injury, that he could be out there again at a key moment.
Right. Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. I wouldn't be too excited for that. And Stan, one last outfield question for you before we let you go. Aaron Hicks, as we mentioned, I don't see him bringing a ton to this team. Ryan and I talked about it a little bit in depth before this segment, but he kind of is still on the injured list. He hasn't really played. He said it's kind of a day-to-day thing. That's what Rake wrote in his Masson Sports article this morning. Mm-hmm. Where are you with him? Do you have any hope that Aaron Hicks can be the guy he was for the first 3 weeks?
I just think the idea that all of a sudden they're going to... Now, look, I don't know the nature of his injury this time, how serious it is, but this is, I think, what frustrated Yankee fans about Aaron Hicks. It wasn't just that he wasn't producing. See, in Baltimore, we don't say, well, he didn't produce anything. He played, he added a good bit to the offense. And I think one of the things I loved about him and really didn't know about his game as much was how well he controlled the strike zone. In other words, he made pitchers throw
Agreed.
7, 8, 9 pitches. And that's something I like. But they've got to make a determination whether he's going to be able to get to the post, so to speak, because you can't make the club from the tub. And I don't know, but I think the notion that they're suddenly going to say, hey, let's give Heston Kjerstad, I don't think that's going to happen this year. It doesn't look to me like it's going to happen. I mean, it might happen in September, and then if he's on the 40-man roster, I guess if there is a genuine injury and Hicks would get hurt, he could factor into it.
Maybe.
But I think they're thrilled with where Kjerstad is at now, and might be thinking, hey, that's great, and he'll play a serious role next year.
Yeah.
But to throw him in right now might be a little much. But certainly a September 1st recall might factor in.
Okay. Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. Stan, what do you have coming up this week on your shows?
Last Monday we had T-Bone Shelby on, and we did it at the normal 7 o'clock time.
Okay.
Our new normal time is 4 o'clock for nights like Monday where Luke and I can get to games if we need to. So Luke, Ross, and I will bat around the Orioles on Monday night, Monday at 4, and then on Thursday at 7, I will have Mr. Bo Smolka on to talk about the cover story. A lot of the same stuff he talked to Glenn and I about yesterday, but we'll talk to Bo Smolka, our Ravens reporter.
Sounds great. That should be interesting. I hope to talk a little Ravens with Ryan at the end of the show here. But Stan, thank you so much, as always, for your weekly segment. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Take care, Stan.
Bye. And that was Stan the Fan Charles for his weekly segment. As you already heard, he has some great things coming up for you this week. He's changed up the format, though, for his weekly shows. Now, every Monday at 4 p.m., Stan will be joined by former Orioles pitcher Ross Grimsley and Pressbox's managing editor Luke Jackson to break down the latest with the Birds. And every Thursday night, Stan and Gary Stein will chat with a new newsmaker from the world of sports. This week, Stan and Ross were joined by 1983 World Series champion John T-Bone Shelby, while Stan and Gary chatted with Maryland Cycling Classic chairman John Kelly. You can watch the shows live at facebook.com/pressbox or find them the next day at pressboxonline.com/video and youtube.com/pressboxonline. So join Stan, Ross, and Luke this and every Monday night. This week, Thursday, as Stan just mentioned, at 7 p.m., Bo Smolka will be on to talk about the Ravens and what they have going on. We're going to catch a break. I'm going to try to get some of our tech issues figured out. Going to give Griffin from Glenn Clark Radio a call and see why it still says Glenn Clark Radio when that's not what I have put up here on my end. So we'll figure that out, and we'll be back with Sounding Off on the Bat Around.
You feel that? That's the sound of football coming back, and now's the time to place your preseason bets with Superbook Sports. Superbook is the most trusted name in Vegas, and now you can use my promo code GlennClark23 to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, they'll match your first bet up to $250 with the promo code GlennClark23, all one word, no spaces, 2 N's in Glenn. Don't miss out this football season. Win some money with Superbook Sports and that promo code GlennClark23. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
To another exciting weekend of affordable family fun at Prince George's Stadium with the Bowie Bay Sox. It's the return of Grateful Dead Night on Friday the 18th. A special t-shirt package is available. Back-to-back fireworks carry on to Saturday the 19th with our Baytoberfest. Get some beer specials while you enjoy the game. And get here early on Sunday for a pre-game Meet the Team autograph session. Get your tickets now by calling 301-805-6000 or anytime online at baysox.com. The Bowie Bay Sox. Let us be your 9-inning vacation.
I'm Michael Giangrandi, president of AJ Michaels, your carrier energy expert for 44 years. Save money, energy, and make your home more comfortable and virus-free. Find us at ajmichaels.com. That's ajmichaels.com.
It's game on every day at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland. Here, you are in on every play with 100-foot screens at Sports and Social, the best table games action, and FanDuel Sportsbook, all just steps away. The best bar bites and drinks to indulgent steaks and curated cocktails. Your game day only gets better when matched up with Live's distinguished dining options. Late game? No problem. Our luxury hotel awaits. Live Casino and Hotel Maryland is the place to be on game day and every day. For more information, visit www.maryland.livecasinohotel.com. At Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
Hike to new heights. The best view is yours in Washington County. Our iconic scenic overlooks provide some of the most breathtaking vistas in the Mid-Atlantic. Some are very easy walks, some can be driven to, and some are the payoff for a moderate to difficult hike. All are near quaint small towns that offer great dining, shopping, hiking gear, and more. Explore our 5 national parks for iconic vistas and wineries with breathtaking views. Visit our quaint historic towns and make your stay unforgettable. Learn more at visithagerstown.com. Maryland, be open.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
Picking a restaurant to try for the first time? Let's look at the Costas Inn. Here's a few checklist items. Quality of the food? Check. Quality of service? Check. Does restaurant have plenty of free parking? Check. And finally, does restaurant have delicious steamed crabs, crab cakes, crab soup, and specials galore? Check, check, check. Costas Inn, 4100 North Point Boulevard. They check all the boxes.
Welcome back in to the Bat Around from break 1 here, almost in the second hour now. We just had Stan the Fan Charles for his weekly segment at 10:25. Ryan Blake is here with us, as we've mentioned quite a few times now on this show. The tech issues, I called Griffin from Glenn Clark Radio, and he said that they messed around with it yesterday, and that's probably why things aren't working exactly as they should. But not a big deal. People are here. You can find us on the audio on pressbox.com, and then obviously we are streaming on YouTube, just under the wrong name for some variety of reasons. But anyway, we are live and things are going okay here. Ryan will be with us for the entire second hour as well, as he was supposed to be. We're going to do Orioles banter. We're going to do sounding off, where I want to talk about a team that I've talked about quite a few times already on this show, and I get really frustrated by them because I think they're probably, I would argue, a bottom 5 run team in baseball. I don't like the way they're run. And it's because of the way they've drafted. They were the team that took, 20 pitchers it was, just 2 years ago?
Yeah, they took a no-hitter in the draft.
Yeah, they took a no-hitter in the draft. They've done things that make absolutely no sense, all in the name of fake winning, is what I like to call it. It's fake winning. They go out there and they do things that make absolutely no sense to try to win when they can't. And they've done that again. Noah Schanuel, and that's how they pronounced it on this minor league. I believe that's how they pronounced it. Am I correct, Ryan? Schanuel. There you go. Noah Schanuel is their number 1 overall pick. This past draft in 2023, their first round pick, who I sounded off on about 2 or 3 weeks ago because they brought him up to Double-A, and I said, this is ridiculous. He played 6 games in anything lower than Double-A. It was a combination of, I think, the one of the rookie ball leagues and then A+, I believe it was, and then came up to Double-A, and I said, that's ridiculous. You got to let this guy mature. He's from Florida Atlantic University, which isn't like a baseball haven. It isn't a baseball producing factor where every year there's guys coming out that are like Bryce Harper. It just doesn't happen. This isn't one of those schools. It's a good school, no doubt, but he and just to give him a little credit, Noah was one of the best hitters in this draft. I don't know how much research you did on it, but it wasn't certainly not my area. The top of the draft this year, but Shanoel was one of the better hitters as of read. And they expected him to be almost a major league level hitter out of college. But so did the Orioles with Adley Rutschman and Bryce Harper and all the other guys that have been really, really good hitters out of the draft. Spencer Torkelson was another guy, number 1 overall pick, who was expected to be a really good hitter right at the get-go, right out of the draft. So, look, they brought him up to Double-A, and now he's in the major leagues. He played 21 games in the minor leagues. That's the least in 45 years, I believe I read, which is interesting because I don't know where that stat came from. But there was a 45-year stat and about guys making the major leagues basically right out of college. So 21 games in the minor leagues. He barely has played any, and he was being very successful. He was hitting high 300s, close to 400. He was really good, and the on-base percentage was excellent. And he's going to hit for a good amount of power, I think. Good, great swing, great plate discipline, knowledge of the zone. But regardless of how Noah plays, and regardless of his career and how everything goes with him, that's not my concern in the sounding off segment. My concern is that the Angels are being completely irresponsible with their prospects. That's my concern. I think the Angels have done this to a number of guys. You look at their shortstop. You look at a number of there was a pitcher as well who came up just recently after only 88 innings pitched in the minor leagues. They haven't been necessarily responsible at the way they've handled these prospects. And I look at, if you're Noah and you're sitting there and you're saying, okay, great, I'm in the major leagues. This is amazing. I'm here after 21 games. But did I get screwed? Did he get screwed? He got screwed out of his development. He got screwed out of actually having minor league plate appearances to kind of figure things out and get adapted to what pro ball looks like. And now he's already in the major leagues. And certainly it's worked out for some guys. You look at Alex Rodriguez, spent very little time in the major leagues and became, as a 19-year-old major leaguer and one of the greatest players in history, regardless of the steroids and everything he did. But there's guys it certainly worked for. But I think regardless of all of that, this is horrible and irresponsible management by the Angels.
This is what they do. They call up guys way too fast. They did it with Reed Detmers. They did it with I think the guy you're thinking of recently is Ben Joyce. The flamethrower out of Tennessee. The first player,
but also Zach Neto is another one that I was trying to think of.
So the first player from each of the last 3 drafts to make their MLB debuts were Angels. This year it was Nolan Schanuel. Last year Zach Neto. The year before that it was Chase Silseth. So this is what they do. They have a track record of doing this, and it's kind of mind-boggling. You'll read things online from people who have been involved with different organizations who are not afraid to talk about these organizations and how they're run. And the Angels are consistently mentioned as one that just it's like they have they draft a guy, they really like the guy, and they're like, we want him on the Angels. We don't want him on the Rocket City Trash Pandas right now. We want him on the Los Angeles Angels. And this guy was he was drafted 6 weeks ago. And yesterday he was batting ahead of Shohei Ohtani.
Batting leadoff
with the greatest baseball player of all time hitting right behind him.
Correct.
I don't look. He went 1 for 4. I think he walked.
And he walked as well.
Reached base twice. He's going to be okay, but don't you want them to have a little bit of seasoning as they increase levels? I mean, it's crazy.
Mind-boggling is a good word for it because there's not really a lot to explain this. You look at the track records of guys who have come up this early, and they're not great, and they're generally not in the past 20, 30 years. So the stat I found, 45 years. He's the first position player to spend that little games in the minor leagues to come up in 45 years. That's what it is. It's the fastest anyone's done it in 45 years. So Obviously, we've seen Ben Joyce. I think Ben Joyce might have done it a little faster, I believe. It wasn't much time at all. They brought him up into a relief role really quick. And then Garrett Crochet on the White Sox came up with 0 minor league games played. And the White Sox immediately got him injured. And he spent a year. He spent a year on the injured list with Tommy John, and maybe a little more than a year. So things didn't go exactly great there. I think he would have had Tommy John either way.
Likely.
You can look at it that way. But look, again, regardless of whether Nolan is at all successful, I think that there are some serious questions as to whether this is a valid way to handle a baseball team. I don't know if this is valid. And, 21 games, he was hitting well. That's a tiny sample size. I think everyone can agree on that. And frankly, you don't want to see a guy get screwed out of his development. And Zach Neto's been a lot better than I ever could have expected. I believe he's on the injured list now, and he hasn't played in a little while. But look, the Angels, and I did want to make this a little more of an Angels segment because they're really not in it, and they think they are. They didn't trade Shohei Ohtani. Mike Trout, is still on the injured list and still suffering. Taylor Ward's on the injured list. Anthony Rendon is basically the Chris Davis contract at this point.
Yeah.
It's time to talk about that, by the way. Anthony Rendon is almost the Chris Davis contract. He never plays. Chris Davis played. He was horrible. Anthony Rendon never plays. So
and when he did,
what's
when
worse?
he was playing, he got didn't he get suspended earlier this year for yelling at an A's fan?
He did. I think he might have thrown something or something along those lines.
Maybe.
But the Angels right now are 60-63. Their chances to make the postseason based on Baseball Reference are 0.6%. Yeah. It's a 0.6% chance. They're making this move with Nolan to actually try to win. They're trying to say this is our last ditch, desperate move to actually try to make a playoff run. It's not possible. They're not going to do it. They were behind in the AL West when they decided not to trade Shohei Ohtani. There was a glimmer of hope. I think the number on Baseball Reference was like 2.5% back then. Now it's at 0.6. And, to make a playoff run is great. To win the World Series, that's your goal at the end of the day. Your goal is not really to make the playoffs. At least it shouldn't be. If your goal is to make the playoffs, that's a little weird. Your goal should be to win the World Series. And everyone can clearly tell. It's pretty obvious to everyone sitting here that the Angels are not a World Series team. No. So to bring this guy up this early, to bring Zach Neto up as early as they did, regardless of his success, it's going to stop working at some point. And maybe they'll end up drafting number 1 overall at some point soon. And they'll get the best guy in college baseball. And he'll be incredible. And they'll just ruin him because they don't know how to handle a minor league system. It just seems so irresponsible and crazy to me. And I thought Billy Epler ran that team poorly. And now Billy Epler's with the Mets and running that team kind of poorly.
Kind of.
I could go a lot. You know what? We could have a whole Mets segment, but we'll leave that for another day.
Yeah, I love Buck too much.
But it's hard not to love Buck. I want to root for the guy, but he's never going to get another job in baseball. Unfortunately, I think he's done because Billy Epler paid a lot of veterans and paid a lot of guys to do not a lot. The Mets, and then they traded DeGrom, and they didn't trade DeGrom. They let him walk, and then they traded Scherzer, they traded Verlander, which could have been the greatest rotation in the history of baseball. By the way.
Yeah.
It could have been, man, and that's all gone, and the Mets are terrible. But anyway, the Los Angeles Angels were formerly run by Billy Epler, the guy who is now running the train wreck in New York, and now they're run by Perry Miniason, I believe I pronounced that correctly, and he just hasn't done a great job. They're chances to actually get Ohtani and retain Ohtani in the offseason are pretty low. So to do this to Nolan is hard to fathom. That's the point here. If they're not going to make the playoffs, this is hard to fathom.
I feel for Mike Trout. He's tied into a long-term contract there, and
he signed for his age 45 season, I believe. So
something like that.
Yeah,
Granted, he hasn't been able to stay on the field the last couple of years, but still one of the greatest, and I think deserves. We want to see him in the playoffs. He's played in 3 playoff games and lost all 3 of them.
Yeah.
To the A's, who ironically, are the worst team in baseball now. But
am I wrong, or did the A's sweep the Braves this season? I believe they did at one point.
Something crazy happened.
There was something, and that's Major League Baseball. And I was talking to a friend about this, and I was saying, look. The Orioles may very well lose a game. They may lose 2 games against the A's in this series. It's possible because baseball is baseball, and these are professional teams. And the A's at the end of the day are still going to win a number of games. They're not going to lose every game they play, and you can't expect them to. So if the Orioles lose, I think people will probably try to burn down the warehouse or something. But this is still a Major League team at the end of the day. They have decent players. Seth Brown is a pretty good hitter. There's some guys on that team that are are pretty solid players. So the Orioles very well could lose a game, and it wouldn't be out of the question. But last night, obviously, again, we talked about it, that 9-4 win. This is a division for the Angels that is just a lost cause at this point. The Rangers are really good, really good. The Astros have been exceptional, even though at the beginning of the season they certainly were far from that. So it's going to be tough. But that's what it is. They're deciding to be run how they want to run. Ryan, would you say you're ready for the payoff pitch around the league? Do you have your notes up here?
Yeah.
I think we're going to transition right into that since we are talking about a team that is not the Baltimore Orioles. After that, we'll run into a little Orioles banter.
Yeah, well, this was mostly written by Paul, but I added a couple things here and there for the payoff pitch around the league. We'll start with the Orioles and the Oakland Athletics. Kyle Gibson struggled against the league's worst offense, giving up 4 runs over 5 innings, but the Orioles' bats were better as all 9 starters, plus injury substitution Ramon Arias, recorded at least 1 base hit. Gunnar Henderson hit a 438-foot home run and drove in 3 as the Orioles extended their streak without getting swept to 79 series with that 9-4 victory. Akil Baddoo homered and doubled, and Tariq Skubal struck out 7 over 6 innings of 1-run ball to lead the Tigers past the Guardians 4-2 in Game 1 of a doubleheader. In Game 2, Xavion Curry spun 6 innings of 1-run ball, and Will Brennan collected 2 hits and 2 RBIs to earn Cleveland a win and a split 4-1. Bobby Witt Jr. homered and drove in 2, while Cole Ragan struck out 9 over 6 frames, and the Royals took care of the Cubs 4-3. Brett Kennedy tossed shutout innings, followed by the Cincinnati bullpen allowing just 1 base runner over the final 4 innings, and Christian Encarnacion Strand played the hero with a walk-off home run in the bottom of the 9th to give the Reds a 1-0 victory over the Blue Jays. The 1-4 hitters for Boston collected 11 of the team's 12 hits and drove in all 8 runs, led by Masataka Yoshida's 4 RBIs in the Red Sox 8-3 victory over the Yankees. Aaron Judge homered for the Yankees in the loss, who dropped to 2 games below 500. C.J. Abrams hit a 3-run homer, while Lane Thomas, Stone Garrett, and Blake Rutherford collected 3 hits apiece to lead the Nationals over the Phillies 8-3. Kyle Schwarber homered twice in the loss, and Philly starter Michael Lorenzen allowed 7 runs, 6 earned in 3 1/3 innings
after a no-hitter
in his first start since his no-hitter. Michael Harris II collected 4 hits, but it was the Spencer Strider show as the Braves' young ace struck out 10 and allowed just 1 hit over 7 shutout innings, and the Braves held serve, shutting out the Giants 4-0. William Contreras, Carlos Santana, and Mark Canha combined for 8 ribeyes, and the bullpen survived a 4-run Rangers barrage in the bottom of the 9th as the Brewers held on to beat Texas 9-8. Julio Rodriguez stayed the hottest hitter on the planet, collecting his 3rd straight 4+ hit game, going 4 for 5 with a home run, making the Seattle superstar 13 for his last 16 as he led the Mariners to a 2-0 victory.
That's hard to believe.
Oh, it's crazy. He's doing his best Ryan Mountcastle in Toronto impression. A 2-0 victory over the Astros. Lost in the shuffle was Seattle starter Bryce Miller, allowing just 2 hits over 6 1/3 shutout innings. Pablo Lopez struck out 7 over 6 shutout innings, and Michael A. Taylor hit a 2-run homer to pace the Twins in their 5-1 win over the Pirates. Brennan Nimmo had 3 hits, and Jeff McNeil drove in 4 to lead the Mets past the Cardinals 7-1 for their 3rd straight victory. Ezekiel Tovar, Elias Diaz, and Ryan McMahon each homered, and 5 batters drove in at least 2 for the Rockies as they blasted the White Sox 14-1. Shohei Ohtani hit a grand slam. Nolan Schanuel became the first 2023 draft pick to debut in the majors and also became the first 2023 draft pick to record a major league hit. And then, after all that, Harold Ramirez grounded into a triple play with the go-ahead run at third base in the top of the 9th. Paul didn't finish that one out, but the Rays took care of the Angels 9-6 in extra innings. San Diego's Seth Lugo struck out 9 in 6 shutout innings, and Arizona's Brandon, I can't pronounce that, Fod, I think it's Fod, allowed just 1 hit in 7 shutout innings of his own. Unfortunately for Arizona, former Oriole Miguel Castro pitched the 8th, allowing 4 runs on 3 hits, and the final blow coming by way of a Fernando Tatis Jr. home run. And the Padres, despite just 4 hits, took home the 4-0 victory. Last but not least, Jorge Soler hit 2 of the Marlins' 5 home runs, all of which came off of Dodgers starter Tony Gonsolin, who surrendered 10 earned runs in 3 1/3 innings as the Marlins ended the Dodgers' 11-game winning streak in dominating fashion with an 11-3 win.
Well, they have a doubleheader today, so the Dodgers will get another chance. at 2 games. Cutter Crawford, Garrett Cole, Red Sox and Yankees classic AL East matchup. That's in the Bronx at 105. Brady Singer, Justin Steele, righty versus lefty. Royals and Cubs, that's 2:20 at Wrigley in Chicago. As I mentioned, game 1 of that doubleheader between the Marlins and the Dodgers. That's going to be played at Dodger Stadium. The first game scheduled for 3 o'clock. Yuri Perez, Caleb Ferguson. Again, we'll get to that second game in a moment here. D-backs and Padres, to be determined. Our favorite pitcher for the Padres, Merrill Kelly, goes for the D-backs. That's another doubleheader we're going to get to in a second. 3:10 at Petco Park. Phillies and Nationals, Christopher Sanchez, Jake Irvin, 4:05 in the district. Freddie Peralta goes against Dane Dunning, Brewers and Rangers, 4:05 at Globe Life Field. Another doubleheader on the docket today for us. Angels and Rays. Tyler Glasnow goes in Game 1. Chase Silseth goes in Game 1 for the Angels. 4:05 at Angel Stadium. Chris Bassett, Brandon Williamson, righty versus lefty. Blue Jays, Red, 6:40 at Great American Ballpark. Tigers and Guardians will go head-to-head, 7:10. Matt Manning, Tanner Bybee. That's at Progressive Field in Cleveland. Mariners and Astros, 2 teams in the same division. Logan Gilbert, Framber Valdez, 7:10 at Minute Maid Park. Mitch Keller, who I hoped to be an Oriole to trade deadline, but sadly not, against Sonny Gray. Twins and Pirates, 7:10 at Target Field. Kodai Senga goes for the Mets. Miles Michaelis goes for the Cardinals, 7:15 at Busch Stadium in St. Louis. Logan Webb goes for the Giants. Rihanna Chirinos goes for the Braves, 7:10 at Truist Park. That one is in Atlanta. White Sox and Rockies, 8:10 at Coors Field. Jesse Schultens goes against Kyle Freeland. To be determined for the D-backs. For the Padres, Yu Darvish, that's Game 2 of that doubleheader at Petco Park. Zach Eflin, Patrick Sandoval, Game 2 of that doubleheader as well. Rays and Angels scheduled for 9:07 in Anaheim. Orioles and A's, Cole Irvin makes another start after throwing 5 shutout innings last time around against Ken Waldichuk and the Oakland A's. Orioles look to win Game 2 of that series. I also can't read, Ryan. Marlins and Dodgers, Game 2 of that doubleheader. Braxton Garrett, Julio Arias, a battle of the lefties. That's the final game of the night, 9:10 at Dodger Stadium. So 3 doubleheaders, if that's your thing.
And no one was postponed last night. So
no,
are these just
these
old
are these are
makeups?
makeup games from, I believe, all were August 20th. All 3 were August 20th.
No, that's
That-
tomorrow.
That's what I have listed here.
August 20th is tomorrow.
It was moved from August 20th. It was canceled because you're
that's
right. It is tomorrow. It was moved because Hurricane Hillary, I believe it is. It's a rare West Coast hurricane. So they're all moved and they're all going to be doubleheaders today. So if that's your thing. By the way, Ryan, I don't think I've ever heard your take on this. Are you a doubleheader guy that's a 7-inning doubleheader guy or a 9-inning doubleheader guy?
9.
I'm a 7 personally.
Okay. If I'm going to the game, I want 9.
Okay.
Because if I'm going to the stadium, I want to be there for as long as I can.
Really? Oh yeah. 18 innings is a lot of baseball, man. That's a lot of baseball.
Look, I don't get tired of it. I mean, unless you get blown out in the first game.
Yeah.
Look, I went to the doubleheader that the Orioles lost 30-3, and then they lost, I think 9-7 in Game 2. Because people forget the 30-3 game was Game 1 of a doubleheader.
Game 1, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Look, I don't know. I mean, I don't have a strong take on that. I'm not opposed to 7-inning doubleheaders.
Yeah.
I'm a give me as much baseball as possible kind of guy.
I think 14 makes a lot more sense. I mean, I know it's completely against everything that's traditional, and traditional baseball people will be hating me for this, but that's what I thought was really, really efficient. You know, and 7 innings, you throw a no-hitter, and it's like it's not a real no-hitter. If you throw a perfect game, it's not a real perfect game. It kind of screws with everything. But
that's the thing. Madison Bumgarner throws a 7-inning no-hitter last year. It was a 7-inning game. He complete game, no hits. That's a no-hitter. And Major League Baseball was like, no, we're not counting it.
So as you mentioned, I was at you said you were at the Rangers one where they lost 30-3. I was at a Yankees doubleheader about 4 years ago where the Orioles were, I think it was the 2018 season, so it might have been 5 years ago at this point. And the Orioles got decimated, like absolutely decimated in both games. I think the Yankees put up 18 runs combined in both games, and the Orioles scored maybe 4. And I sat through 18 innings of baseball because my friends didn't want to leave. I would have been out of there third inning. If the Orioles are down that bad and that early of a game, they lost the first one, I'm out of there for sure. But that's a game where you simply do not want to sit through 18 innings of baseball. But maybe now, if you're Baltimore Orioles and you're the best team in the American League or the best team in the AL East, certainly a different story. So I don't know. I'm kind of with you. I like the traditional sense of it, but I mean, overall, baseball's made a lot of rule changes where you kind of have to think about whether it's really traditional baseball. I mean, you got the bigger bases now, and I'm not sure really anyone cares about that. I think it's actually helped stolen base production. You got Ronald Acuna. What's he stolen? Like 40 bases already?
He's over 50. He's on pace
over
for
50,
he's
yeah.
on pace for like 80, I think.
Which is just it's ridiculous. But I think it's actually really benefited the game in some ways. Some of the other rule changes, I mean, you kind of look at them now. We're in August and in the middle of August, and you can kind of, I guess, really quantify these rule changes a little more than you could have a few months ago, and you can really start to judge them. And certainly, I want the 7-inning doubleheaders back. I'm disappointed about that, but I think the big bases are certainly a good thing.
You know what I miss, and it's not about the innings. I miss when teams schedule doubleheaders. I would love to know in advance there's going to be a single admission doubleheader, and I'm going to block off my Saturday for it.
I got good news for you. There's scheduled doubleheaders next year. I'm almost positive
Really?
about that. Yeah, because the schedule came out, 2 months ago, a month ago, something like that?
Yeah.
And there are scheduled doubleheaders. So
Interesting. For the Orioles or just in general?
So there were in the 2023 schedule as well. It was Tampa Bay and Boston. And then, let's see, I got to pull up this thing here. June 3rd, Tampa Bay and Boston was a scheduled doubleheader. July 15th, San Diego and Philadelphia, and then the Dodgers and Colorado, September 26th. So there were 3 of them, but no, the Orioles were not included. And I don't think the Orioles have any next year as well.
I would like one of them a month, please.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I
give them Thursday and Friday off. That might be a little too much, but
I mean, I feel like, too, the argument for 14-inning doubleheaders is that you really get to save a lot of your guys. Doubleheaders are hard on your players, especially, a guy like Adley Rutschman can't catch both games. And probably, with the way the Orioles have been DHing him a lot more lately, they wouldn't want that at all. They wouldn't want him to catch one game and then DH the next game either.
That's true. And I will say the caveat to all this is I'm speaking as a fan. I
Sure.
I don't know the rigors of playing 18 innings in one day as a baseball player. It might be that the players are entirely opposed to it, and if that's the case, so be it. I'm speaking strictly as a fan. That's all.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that, and certainly Paul Valley's with you because I've asked him on the show many times, and he goes, "Give me every possible inning of baseball you can. I'll sit down and watch all 18."
Dude,
but
there's nothing like
that's a choice.
One of my favorite things to do is when I am anticipating a game being postponed and people are selling their tickets on third-party sites for cheap, I will buy a ticket to the game that's going to get postponed in the hopes that they'll reschedule it as a single admission doubleheader, and I'll have that cheap ticket. There's nothing like waking up on a Saturday and being like, I get to go to the stadium and watch 2 baseball games today for the price of one.
Hey, well,
I love it.
That's an opinion. I'm not there with you, but Ryan, I think Paul's his intention was to talk about the team in parts. So you look at the bullpen, you look at the offense, and you look at the starting rotation. So I think he wanted us to start out with the bullpen here and give a little bit of an overall discussion, which we already have a little bit. Where I want to start off with Cano. We talked about him in the beginning of the segment, or beginning of the show, I should say. We talked about him. I look at it as maybe a possible doghouse situation where he was thrown into the 9th inning, where that's usually in the past that's been like a Keegan Aiken role. That's been a Brian Baker role, the guys that maybe haven't pitched quite as well. To see Cano with, a 1.75 ERA going into last night's game, pitch that game was a bit surprising to me. So where are you on Cano overall? You already talked about your take on that, but where are you on Cano as a whole? Do you still trust him in the 8th inning? Is he your setup guy? Is there another guy you'd rather in that situation, or how do you feel?
Well, looking at his game log, he has been much better of late. He had a stretch where he was, it seemed like he was giving up multiple base runners in just about every outing for a while. He has not given up a run yet in August, and that's 7 appearances in August. Only walked 1, only gave up 4 hits. So he's been much better as of late. And, after hearing Stan's reasoning, he was on 4 days rest before last night, which was the 18th. He had not pitched since the 13th.
Yeah.
I think it's more a matter of
getting him innings,
keeping him fresh, getting him a low-leverage outing. Up by 5, there's no pressure there in the 9th inning. Obviously, you're not going to use Felix Bautista in that situation. I think Fuji had pitched the night before. So I think it's a matter of just getting him some work and keeping him a little fresh. Overall, there was a stretch where I was really concerned with Cano. I didn't think he was supposed to be the 8th inning guy anymore.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was fantastic at the beginning of the season, and then had a stretch where he still wasn't giving up a ton of runs, but he was giving up a ton of base runners. He had like a 2-month stretch where his whip was like 160-something. And that's concerning as your setup man. Lately, he has been very good, and so he's struck out at least one hitter in all but one August outing. look.
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit of fatigue that wore him out, and hopefully he's started to get back into a little bit better shape.
Yep.
Get that release point up where he likes it, because he was dropping that shoulder down a little bit, dropping the elbow, and it was weird. There was a stretch where it looked like he had just ditched his changeup for some reason. He's been throwing that a little bit more lately. So I'm not as concerned about him now as I was in June and July. But I do think you need one of these other guys in the bullpen to step up and be an eighth inning option, because it's not every night that you can count on Cano anymore.
Yeah, I have to agree. I'm a little bit worried about Cano, and like you said, it seemed like for a while there he was giving up a base runner every 5 seconds. It was like he came in and automatically there was a guy on base, whether it was a walk or a base hit, and a lot of things were going to get hard off Cano, and that was my early concern. But then you look at this team, and I thought Fujinami would be the guy that was the eighth inning guy and could come in and certainly pitched really well in Oakland before the trade, and then came over here, and like you said, after the first 3 pitches, you have no idea what Fujinami you're going to get. So I don't think he's the eighth inning guy. I don't think Mike Ballman is. Like Stan said, I'm not sure he's in your circle of trust at the moment. But you look at Cano, and he still has the 5th best WAR on the team, and that's behind 4 really good players. I mean, that's Kyle Bradish, Gunnar Henderson, Felix Bautista, and Adley Rutschman. Like, he's in really good company. Yeah. Cedric Mullins is behind him with 2.4 WAR. He's at 2.6. So things have gone well as of late, and there's a good stretch. I just worry about when you face a team like the Astros, which we see the way the Orioles handled the Astros just a few weeks ago. It wasn't pretty. That was a bad series. One of the worst of the year. I look at that and I say, do you trust Yennier Cano against that lineup in the playoffs? I'm not sure I do. But then again, I'm not sure I trust anyone else besides Felix Bautista either. I don't think I do.
So I did say that Cano has not allowed an earned run in the month of August. He has, however, both games in that Astros series when he came in to pitch, he allowed an inherited runner to score.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, the level of trust there is certainly not what it was for his, first 15 to 20 appearances of the season. I still think he's a good pitcher.
Right.
I still think he's a really good pitcher. It's just a matter of making the right pitches in the right spots. Because
totally agree.
When he comes in and a player is sitting on that sinker and puts a good swing on it, he's given up a lot of doubles, it feels like.
Yeah.
And a lot of hard contact.
No doubt.
So it's one of those things that you really want him to hone in on that. And I think he very well could be a dominant eighth inning guy in the postseason. But the level of trust in that is kind of hit or miss.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And now with Danny Coulomb on the injured list, and he's probably on there probably a little longer than most people would expect, I think there's going to be a slow play for the Orioles getting him back because they know how valuable that arm is. He had a 2.77 ERA when he went on through 47 games. And he's a guy that is probably the second guy you trust outside of Felix Bautista. Probably, in my opinion, the second best guy in this bullpen. And when he went on the injured list, that's a huge loss. Obviously, now Webb has come in, and Webb's looked pretty good. And I haven't seen – there's a few games I've missed that Webb's pitched in already, so I want to get your take on Webb. You've probably seen him a little more than I have. How's Webb looked overall to you?
He's looked really good.
Okay.
He's a lot of strikeouts, a lot of soft contact. I think he struck out his first 5 batters that he faced in an Orioles uniform. I think I don't know this for sure, but I think he's only given up 1 hit in
You're correct.
5 or
1
6
hit,
outings.
6 innings, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, it looks like Mike Elias did it again in getting a waiver claim. And I noticed this in some notes earlier, and we haven't gotten to talk about it. We talked about how poorly the Angels are run. Why would they DFA a Jacob Webb? It doesn't make sense. Stan had him on his fantasy team earlier this year.
Yeah.
He's a solid guy.
I don't think people realize how good Jacob Webb was in 2019. He had a 1.39 ERA through 36 games with Atlanta, which is unreal, frankly.
I mean, goodness. Look,
that's amazing.
This could be another one of those pickups that, like, Cianel Perez, we claimed him off waivers, and then he had a 165 last year.
Yeah.
Granted, he hasn't been the same guy this year, but he had a stretch where he was really, really good.
Yeah.
The Orioles have this pitching lab up in Bel Air.
Yep.
And it works wonders, apparently.
How often do you think guys are actually there, though? Do you think that's like more of an off-season thing? Okay.
To be honest, I'm not sure. Do you think the pitching lab, is it like a physical place?
That's what I would assume it is. I hear it referred to all the time, but I don't know what it actually is.
Maybe it's just like a what's it called? Like something that
a room with a ton of computers in it that guys, all like the Sigma-Dells of the world just do math on for 8 hours a day.
Like, is it like a drive line or is it like an idea? I'm not sure.
I mean, given that they say it's a physical location in Bel Air, I would think that means it's a physical, actual lab where guys throw off mounds.
But have any of us actually seen it?
No, I mean,
I want to go check it out.
It's hidden. I mean, I live pretty close there. I could easily get down there and find out, do a little investigative research for the show.
Yeah.
But Jacob Webb, as you mentioned, I mean, 3.98 ERA with Los Angeles. And as Paul put in the notes, we talked about how bad the Angels are. And I guess I shouldn't say they're that bad. They're only 3 games under 500. But they need everything they can get. To DFA a guy who has that good of numbers and is striking out almost 10 guys per 9, the walks were a little high. And he's cut down by almost 4 guys per 9 so far. So that trend is a little concerning to me. He cut down 4 guys per 9 on walks in his 6 appearances with the Orioles compared to his 29 appearances with the Angels.
Yeah.
I look at that number reverting a little bit. He'll probably end up in like the 4 range, not 5.7.
And it did with Cano a little bit too. And I mean, look, Felix Bautista, his biggest concern coming through the minors was this guy's nasty, but he walks way too many guys. And and he's had a couple stretches this season where he would, walk 2 or 3 guys, load the bases, and then strike out the side.
Yeah.
But I don't think there was a month. I think it was June. He didn't walk a single batter.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, something in Chris Holt. I bow to you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably the guy who oversees that pitching lab, I would guess. I don't know what it is, but Jacob Webb has certainly been a welcome addition and a guy who, only threw 29 games in Los Angeles, so certainly has some gas probably left in the tank, and you can hope that he's going to come out and keep throwing really good innings and keep that ERA low, and that's going to really help the Orioles down the stretch. Now, another guy, let's talk about him. I mentioned him earlier. Fujinami is probably he's almost... I think I mentioned this with Jorge Mateo last year on Connor Newcomb's show, Locked On Orioles podcast. I mentioned that I thought he was the most confusing player on the Orioles. Now the guy is Fujinami. He's the most confusing player on the Orioles. Because, like you mentioned, first 3 pitches he throws, you have a pretty good idea of what the outing's going to look like. If they're out of the zone, if they're wild, he's going to have a pretty bad outing. But there's also another tell. It's if he's in a high-pressure situation where runners are on base. He hasn't been good. And, he comes up in a mop-up roll, and he throws 100 miles an hour, and he looks electric. The slider's great. Everything looks amazing. But it's a kind of a really different outing every time you get Fujinami. You never really know what to expect. Can they trust him at all in high-leverage situations, or is he literally your last guy you're using in those at this point?
I think we're going to get to the point where we can.
Okay.
And maybe that's bold, maybe that's optimistic. And I'm going to contradict myself here real quick because I said earlier in the show that, after 3 pitches, and you've brought that up again a couple times. And
I agree. I mean, that's my take.
I'm gonna contradict myself because his last outing, his first 3 pitches were not even close. And then James McCann called time, went out to the mound, and he ended up retiring all 3 guys he faced.
That's a testament to James McCann, too, though.
And what a great spot to do that, too.
Yes.
Before he walks the leadoff batter.
Yep.
Come in and say, and I guess McCann postgame, I don't remember the exact quote, but he said something along the lines of, I told him, look, your stuff is nasty, just be you.
Right.
Fill up the zone. They're not going to be able to hit it very well.
Yeah.
This guy he can touch 103 with his fastball.
Yeah.
He has a splitter that he can throw at 95.
Right.
He's got a cutter at 90, 91, 92.
Right.
That if he can locate it on the outer half of the plate, it's untouchable.
Yep.
He should be Felix Bautista level numbers of dominance.
Yes.
And he's not. And I don't get it. I understand the control isn't there, right? The command isn't there.
Right.
Little too many pitches hanging over the heart of the plate. But, man, if they can tweak something mechanically where he's got his confidence back, he can be an absolutely disgusting pitcher. And this is his first year in the major leagues, too.
You have to think it's more of a mental thing.
Yeah.
Like it's just he's a rookie who is 29, I believe.
Yeah.
Let me
Pitched
check.
his whole career in Japan.
Yeah, 29.
But he's come over and he seems like a fun bullpen guy. I think the relievers have welcomed him with open arms.
Yep.
And I've seen a couple quotes or articles that have said, he's learning a new word of English every day, and he's already become good friends with Danny Coulomb and Mike Bauman and all that, and they're swapping knowledge with each other. I really do think Fuji is going to be a solid reliever.
Okay.
I'm not sure. So I when you first asked me this question, I said I think we'll get to the point where we can trust him in high leverage situations. I don't know if that point is going to be this season.
Okay.
But I do think it's going to come in the future, and I hope the Orioles retain him, re-sign him, and try to continue working with him.
Yeah.
Because the stuff is undeniable.
That was going to be where I go next. Is he a guy who comes back next year? Because he's on a 1-year, $3 million deal. I see it as pretty likely. And if he had pitched really well, lights out, and if he still has the chance to do that, frankly. I mean, he's a month and a half left and then playoff games. So he has a chance to do that. And if he stands out in the playoffs, he'll get a big contract. I'm almost sure of that. Because every team's going to be watching, and every team's going to say, oh my God, this guy's incredible stuff. He's pitching well in the playoffs. That will be actually kind of a bad thing for the Orioles, even though it's going to be a really good thing for the Orioles.
Yeah.
Is there a chance the Orioles lock him up right now with an extension? Because I think the chances are almost zero.
Yeah, not right now. No, I think they would wait till after the postseason. And even then, I'm not convinced. If he pitches well enough in the postseason, I'm not sure that they would try to retain him.
They probably won't go to that price. They probably won't. Like I think Michael Givens at $3 million is probably about as high as they're going to go for relievers. Now Felix Bautista is a different story.
Yeah.
Once that comes time where they need to make an extension there, I think they will pay that guy.
Now,
truly do believe that.
If Fuji is really set, pitches to let's say a 1.7 ERA in September and through the postseason, I don't think based on his full season body of work that he's going to command a massive contract.
No,
especially if he's staying in the bullpen, not in a closer role. So I do think I don't think it's one of those things where he's going to price himself out of the Orioles' range.
Yeah.
I think best case scenario for Fuji is he ends up on like a 2-year, $12, $13 million.
I was going to say 15.
And I think that's doable for the Orioles.
Do you think 15 is doable? Is 7.5 a year? That's maybe a little more than I could see the Orioles going for.
It's a little high, but
yeah.
Look, Fuji's a guy it's his first year playing in the United States.
Yeah.
He's got a disgusting pitch mix. Let him work it out. Give him some time. If it doesn't happen this year, I would love for them to bring him back and just give him a shot. Because how many other bullpen options do you have right now?
You don't.
We talked about John Means and DL Hall and Tyler Wells potentially coming back, but they're ultimately maybe Hall's in the bullpen, but ultimately Means and Tyler Wells are starters. Cole Irvin's a starter. Kyle Gibson's a starter. So how many solid bullpen options do you have?
Right. To me, John Means looks like a nothing to me. Like at this point, I don't mean that in a mean way. I don't mean that any other than I don't see him pitching as a valuable member of this team. I just don't. I think
ever again or this
season?
No,
this season.
Okay.
Ever again is a completely different situation. I think he could absolutely be valuable at some point down the road. I just think this season, coming back from an injury like that, is something that takes a very long time, and he's going to have to be built up. And that's already happening in Bowie. He had a really bad outing his last time out. The first outing was a lot better. I just don't really see the Orioles kind of throwing him into the fire and saying, hey, you're back to being John Means. They're probably going to throw him in the bullpen. I don't really expect a lot. I just don't.
You don't see him as like a give us 2 good innings in the 5th and 6th?
I want to know where the velocity's at because it's been about 91 in Bowie. I think that's a little low for him having success. His better years were more like 92, 93, and he was more sitting 90, 91 so far. So he's going to have to build that velocity back, and then if he can work the fastball changeup over and over again like he did to make him really successful and threw a no-hitter in Seattle, I think he might get back to being okay, but I just don't think it's now. I think it's next season. I think it's a whole off season of work.
How about this? He starts at Bowie tomorrow. I will go scout him out.
Okay, yeah.
I'll let you know.
We'll call you next week.
I'll get an accurate velo reading that's not from the stadium gun.
There you go.
That one's never calibrated correctly.
It isn't right, no.
I'll talk to a scout behind the plate, get a feel for how John Means looks. I'll get you a full scouting report.
Sure.
Whether or not I think he's going to be a legitimate guy in the bullpen.
Is he actually throwing tomorrow? Was that happening?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm almost certain Bowie posted a graphic that he was pitching Sunday.
I'm actually happier with him pitching in Bowie than I am in Norfolk because I think I always say I think the competition is a little better in AA. You face better prospects, not really major league flameouts. You face some real guys that are legit guys. So I'm actually excited to see what Means does, and I really hope he does well because the Orioles could need it. And Michael Givens, by the way, one thing we didn't even touch on with Givens is that he was DFA'd.
Yeah.
And
surprise.
It's kind of like. It's so, what's the word for it? Like unceremonious is the word, I guess. His second stint, I guess that's right. His second stint in Baltimore is the most disappointing thing that anybody could have predicted for him. Like Danny Valencia had a better stint in Baltimore, better second stint in Baltimore than Michael Givens ended up having.
I didn't expect a Danny Valencia name drop on this show.
Well, he had those 2 stints, and Steve Pierce had 3? I mean, there's some guys, and Rich Hill almost made a second appearance at the trade deadline. It seemed like
Miguel Tejado's had one.
That's a great example because he came back in 2010 and was just useless basically.
And he went number 9 because Adam Jones was already here. And
it's like Ken Griffey Jr. coming back to the the Mariners at the end of his career and hitting like 136.
Right.
But I really had a lot of high hopes, and they paid him $3 million, and he was pretty good for the Mets last year. He wasn't great, but he was pretty good and certainly serviceable. And he's, again, a guy who can literally just eat innings for you if that's nothing else. And clearly the Orioles didn't even think he was enough for that. So hopefully he passes through waivers. I haven't seen him get claimed yet. He might just elect free agency. I think that would be the more probable approach. And
I think so too.
Some other team brings him up for maybe the Angels will sign him. Who knows? Maybe the Angels will sign him and bring him up. So I don't know. But Givens is out of the picture at this point. Dylan Tate's out of the picture completely. So it's D.L. Hall and John Means. Those are your guys that you're really hoping to
Tyler Wells.
And Tyler Wells,
Yeah.
excuse me. Tyler Wells are you're really hoping, and I still do think Tyler Wells is going to be a starter. So I think you're looking at Hall and
Ultimately,
Means.
yes. Yeah.
Hall and Means for the playoffs and the bullpen down the road. So I do think the Orioles are going to get a little bit of a boost, probably more from Hall than Means, but we'll just see how it works out. And, I'm not looking forward to having to sit through more Brian Baker if he ends up returning, or Keegan Aiken if he ends up returning. So we'll just see what happens with that.
I forgot about the existence of Keegan Aiken.
I don't know if that's in their plans, but I would hope it's not. But
Didn't he get moved? Or no, Austin Voth got moved to the 60-day
Austin
IL.
Voth is out for the year, I believe. Yeah.
Aiken might still be on the 15, but
I would expect to see like 1 or 2 more games at Aiken. I think it's going to happen. I don't know.
In real time or during a rain delay.
We'll see.
They'll replay the
if the Orioles get a doubleheader and you're there, they'll bring him up as the 27th man. That could be.
I could see that. They would just do it for me.
I would love that. Well, we're going to catch a second break. When we come back, we're going to do the second half of Orioles banter, which is going to be, we're going to talk about the offense. We're going to talk about the starting pitching. I have a lot to say on Jack Flaherty. We're going to get there when we come back here on the Bat Around.
It's a Maryland thing you wouldn't understand.
Where the waves meet the shore, you will find Dorchester County. Hi, this is Jimmy Charles. When I think of Maryland, I think Dorchester County on the eastern shore where it's open for making memories. Dorchester County, it's a Maryland thing. For more info, visit www.visitdorchester.org.
It's a Maryland thing. Hell yeah. It's a Maryland thing. Hell yeah.
Picking a restaurant to try for the first time? Let's look at the Costas Inn. Here's a few checklist items. Quality of the food? Check. Quality of service? Check. Does restaurant have plenty of free parking? Check. And finally, does restaurant have delicious steamed crabs, crab cakes, crab soup, and specials galore? Check, check, check. Costas Inn, 4100 North Point Boulevard. They check all the boxes.
Are you a diehard O's fan looking for the perfect way to show your team spirit? Look no further than Birdland Sports. Birdland Sports is a small business run by fans for fans. They offer a wide variety of unofficial O's merchandise, from the Birds Are Coming tees to player cartoon shirts and more. And the best part? Their prices are more affordable than the big guys. So head to birdlandsports.com and grab your gear today. Show your support for the Birds with Birdland Sports.
Soak up summertime fun in Charm City. Enjoy only in Baltimore festivals, mouth-watering eats, and endless entertainment. Cheer on the O's at Camden Yards. Pick crabs by the waterfront. Beat the heat inside a world-class museum, and make memories that will last a lifetime. Go to baltimore.org for more information and to plan your visit.
I'm Griffin Bass, and I have the extraordinary, mind-blowing, and life-affirming pleasure of being the new producer for the absolute funniest, smartest, and most handsome sports host in all of Baltimore. Wait a second, Glenn, I'm working for you, not Jeremy Kahn. If you're not listening to Glenn Clark Radio, here's what you're missing.
He's Coach Kevin Willard.
Glenn, thanks for having me.
Baltimore Ravens wide receiver Rashad Bateman.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
He is outfielder Cedric Mullins.
Thank you guys for having me.
Mr. Marcus Williams, who's now with us.
Man, appreciate it. Happy to be on.
Ravens kicker Justin Tucker.
Thanks for having me.
Adley Rutschman.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
John Angelos.
Thanks a lot. Good to be with you.
He is Gunnar Henderson.
Thank y'all so much.
Marlon Humphrey.
Thank you.
Talia Tungavailoa.
Thank you guys for having me.
He is J.K. Dobbins.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
The great Ray Lewis.
Always good to be on.
He is Mr. Cal Ripken Jr.
Good chatting with you.
Watch Glenn Clark Radio at youtube.com/PressBoxOnline and listen live at PressBoxOnline.com/radio or anytime on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or anywhere you get your podcasts.
America's biggest bike race returns to Maryland Sunday, September 3rd as 120 of the world's best cyclists race the Maryland Cycling Classic presented by United Healthcare. Come enjoy the free fan zones and festival with interactives, food, and drink beginning at noon. Then see the exciting race conclusion from 3 to 5 p.m. in the Inner Harbor. Come be loud, be proud, and let the world hear you. For more information, go to marylandcyclingclassic.us.
I'm Michael Giangrandi, president of AJ Michaels, your carrier energy expert for 44 years. Save money, energy, and make your home more comfortable and virus-free. Find us at ajmichaels.com. That's ajmichaels.com.
All electronic tolling is here to stay in Maryland, and DriveEasyMD.com helps you cruise a little easier. We're Maryland's tolling resource, home to EasyPass, pay-by-plate, and video tolling. It's never been easier to pay your way. DriveEasyMD.com. We'll keep you moving.
You feel that? That's the sound of football coming back, and now's the time to place your preseason bets with Superbook Sports. Superbook is the most trusted name in Vegas, and now you can use my promo code GlennClark23 to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, they'll match your first bet up to $250 with the promo code GlennClark23. All one word, no spaces, 2 N's in Glenn. Don't miss out this football season. Win some money with Superbook Sports and that promo code GlennClark23. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Welcome back in to the Bat Around. We are almost pretty close to closing things out here, but we do have some Orioles banter to cover. We've got a lot to talk about with the starting rotation, Ryan. I want to start off by talking about Jack Flaherty, because Jack Flaherty has been a very mixed bag in the first 3 starts he's had now for the Orioles.
3 starts.
7 earned runs against the Padres a few days ago. 3 earned runs in his second start. 1 earned run in his first start, 6 innings in that first start. He looked really good.
He was, I think, 15 in a row at one point.
Right, against Toronto. He was really amped up. The velocity was super high. He was up at 95, 97, which is far better than we've ever seen from Jack Flaherty in the past, 4 years. He hasn't been there since, I think, 2019, was the last time we saw him with that kind of velocity. I think he was just pumped up. We haven't really seen that same Jack Flaherty with all of that passion and everything that goes with Jack Flaherty since then. And 7 earned runs against the Padres. The Orioles end up losing that game 10-3. Nothing looked good. I don't know any other way to say it than just nothing looked good. And if the Orioles really were hoping that Jack Flaherty can be the guy that can start game 1 in a playoff series, or can start the last game of a playoff series if you need to win it, if it's the rubber match, the Orioles are going to be in trouble because, frankly, Grayson Rodriguez has stepped up, and that's big news. Kyle Bradish has been okay as of late. It had some better starts a few months ago, but those are the guys that you really trust, and you're hoping that Jack Flaherty could be the third. I'm not really sure that's the case right now. Dean Kramer, by all means, has been okay too, but I'm not really sure that he's a guy you're going to trust in game 1 or game 2 or game 3 of a playoff series.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. We were hoping for a big trade deadline acquisition for the rotation. Thought maybe it's going to be Dylan Cease. Maybe it's going to be, even Michael Lorenzen. He comes out in, I think, 8 innings, 2 runs his first outing with Philly, and then a no-hitter in the next one. Meanwhile, Jack Flaherty gives up to a good Padres lineup, don't get me wrong. Yes. But he did it to himself.
Right.
He walked 3 before the Gary Sanchez grand slam.
Right.
Continued walking guys in the second inning, gave up 2 more runs. Threw, I think, 73 pitches in the first 2 innings, which is an absurd number.
I think it was 36 in the first, 37 in the second, I believe it was. So that would be
73.
73.
Yeah.
Good job, Ryan.
Math. Look, it's. I think Flaherty is going to have some really good outings for us. I think he's also going to have a few clunkers.
Yep.
I think that's basically been who he has been for the last couple years.
Yep.
Obviously, was fantastic as a rookie, and as a young pitcher, looked very, very promising.
Yeah.
And then has sort of fallen off a bit since then. But
sure.
I think the talent is still there. He seems like a good clubhouse guy. But clubhouse guys only take you so far
Sure.
in the postseason. So obviously, you want him to come out and pitch very well his next time out. Hopefully that happens and he's able to get a little more confidence back. But it's always tough when you come to a new team and you struggle a little bit. It's gonna be tough for him to figure out. But luckily, the rest of the Orioles rotation has been pretty solid lately, with the exception of Kyle Gibson. We talked about Cole Irvin, who has picked it up lately.
Yeah.
Grayson Rodriguez looks like a dude. Kyle Bradish looks like a dude. Dean Kramer is close to dude status, but
close to dude
he's
status.
had a couple outings where it's like, all right, Dean Kramer's a dude, but he's getting there.
Yeah.
I still think Flaherty is going to be a part of your postseason rotation.
I hope you're right.
Unless he really, really struggles for this team in September. Yeah. I think he's got the postseason experience. He's pitched in the playoffs before. He's pitched in high leverage spots in the playoffs before. So I think he's still going to be in that rotation. Now, you could start him in Game 3 of a series and put him on a real short leash and say, all right, if you walk 2 guys in your first 2 innings, Tyler Wells, you're coming in for the third. And hopefully he can pull what he did when Bradish got hurt in Texas second week of the season and come in and throw 6 no-hit innings.
Right.
I think Wells is a good guy to have in the bullpen behind someone like Jack
Undoubtedly.
You may be able to say the same for DL Hall. Who knows? I think he's looked better as of late. The velocity's back up for him. And so, he could play a role. But as for Flaherty's role, I think it's one of those things where you're going to put him out there in a postseason series, but you're going to have someone at the ready in case he doesn't have it.
Right, and I think the fact that it's gotten progressively worse, where the first start was really good, second start was pretty good, third start was awful. 3 innings, 7 runs. And by the way, they acquired Jack Flaherty not only to pitch quality innings, but to pitch a lot of them.
Yeah.
And when you pitch 3 innings and then tax the bullpen like that for the rest of the 6, that's really rough. The Orioles can't have that. And it's a 5-man rotation right now. So if you end up, or 6-man, excuse me. So if you need to kick someone out and then you have Tyler Wells as well, you can always do that. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Jack Flaherty, but if it gets to that point, then maybe you have to do that. 7 runs, 3 innings is not a good start in any way, shape, or form. No. It's just not a good start. So, let's hope Jack Flaherty turns it around, gets back to what he was. Something in between those first and second starts, because he's not going to be what he was that first start. That was an anomaly for Jack Flaherty. But that second start is more of what I think the pitcher he is. Just a pretty good pitcher. Nothing great.
That's what we want, is for him to be pretty good. And in that outing against the Padres, they fouled off so many 2-strike pitches.
They worked him,
so many full counts in that outing, and it got his pitch count up there.
Yep.
But ultimately, I think he's going to be what you said, a good pitcher, not a great pitcher. If he can throw out some lines like what Kyle Gibson did last night, 5 innings, 4 runs, that's acceptable.
Yeah, I thought Kyle Gibson, we talked about it at the beginning of the show, but I do think last night he's thrown so many innings, and he had been in an average of about 6 1/3, I think, or 6 2/3, that when you see him go 5, it's automatically horrible outing. And again, last night wasn't what you would have wanted, especially in the context of being against Oakland. I mean, Oakland is probably the worst offense in the league, one of them. Bottom 5 at
they're
at
lowest
the best.
in runs scored by about 50.
Right, they've done nothing, and every guy in that lineup besides Seth Brown and Zach Geloff has been pretty good for his credit, but there hasn't been much there. Darryl Hernandez might come up and be that savior. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the point is that Kyle Gibson pitched very mediocre against a horrible offense, and that's the concern here. It's not that he didn't pitch okay and get the win. It's that he pitched okay against a team that's that bad. That's a concern.
Well, the thing with Kyle Gibson too is you look at his career splits. About a 4.15 ERA in April. May it's sub 4.
Mm-hmm.
June and July are in the 4.30 to 4.50 range, and then August and September are over 5.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
He is a guy who historically starts to struggle a bit later in the season.
Right.
And so naturally that's going to be a concern. Now,
no doubt.
The Orioles with the 6-man rotation have the luxury of being able to maybe skip him for a start.
Right.
And, help him boost up a little more durability. I haven't looked at his velo. I don't know if he's, struggling to.
It's been lower as of late. I believe it's been down about a mile per hour, but that's not hugely significant.
That's not a massive drop off.
But it can play part.
Yeah. But, back to Flaherty for a second. A little extra salt in the wound of that Padres game was that same day Drew Rom, who was traded for Jack Flaherty, pitched 6 scoreless against AAA Norfolk.
Yeah, he did. He did.
So a little bit of that was a tough day for the Jack Flaherty trade.
Yeah.
But I still think there's a role for him. I don't think he's at risk of losing a rotation spot just yet. Now, if he goes out his next outing and throws up another clunker, maybe we're having a different conversation.
Starting to worry a little bit. I mean, it's not even the runs given up, really, for me. It's the amount of innings, because you have to keep this bullpen healthy. We talked about it in the last segment that there just aren't that many guys. It's simple as that. There just aren't. And behind them, you don't know what you're getting with DL Hall and John Means and Tyler Wells.
Right.
And, whoever else the Orioles might decide to bring up. Gillespie, if he's still around. By the way, one other guy I want to mention before we move on to our final segment with the lineup is a guy that's been up and down a little bit, acquired a few years ago, Nick Vespi. What are your feelings on Nick Vespi? Obviously, a kind of a soft tosser, lefty, weird arm slot. There's some things to like about Nick Vespi, but there's also a lot to not like in the previous years that he's pitched here, and the numbers haven't been that great, but the numbers have been okay this year. What's your take so far on Vespi?
I'm a big Vespi guy.
Okay, I can see with the smile you got on your face right
now. Look, I like Nick Vespi a lot. He's a guy, and it's more of a personal attachment because I saw him for the first time in person at Delmarva, and really liked his slider.
Okay,
and his hair, obviously.
Oh yeah,
he's had the hair ever since he was a low A.
Yeah,
and this was back when Delmarva was. I guess they were never high A. They were below Frederick, back when we had the whole thing.
They were just A, I believe.
Yeah. But. He's not going to blow anything past you.
No.
But he's got that combination of cutter, slider, curveball, all of which have different shapes, all of which have different velocities. And I think there's, a lot to be said about a guy who can throw 3 pitches like that from a weird arm slot. Lefties have trouble with him. Righties can have trouble with him if he gets the cutter up in on the hands and is able to drop the curveball, the slider down by the ankles, and get some swings and misses on that.
Yep.
I like him a lot, and it blows my mind that the Orioles haven't really given him a fair shake.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he's frustrated with that because he's pitched lights out at AAA Norfolk for 2 years now. And twice this year he was called up and then optioned without making an appearance.
It reminds me of that Dan Clark tweet. I know his name should never be mentioned, but Dan Clark tweeted that one time. I'm sure you remember this. What does Jimmy Yacobonis have to do to get a call-up? Do you remember that? It was going around for like a year where he would tweet that over and over and over again. And it seemed like the same thing with Nick Vespi. Like, what else does Nick Vespi have to do in the minor leagues to get a call-up? He wasn't giving up runs. He was...
Right.
And maybe, we weren't watching him down there. We didn't see exactly what he was doing. So maybe there was something off mechanically. Who knows? But he's here now. And you hope that it ends up working out well for them. And certainly with Coulomb on the injured list, it's certainly good to have a lefty in there. And hopefully he's somewhat effective. That's all we can hope for with Nick Vespi.
Jimmy Yacobonis, by the way, all-time great guy.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he is.
Super nice.
I think I met him at FanFest one year. He was a pretty good guy.
I met him down. So I was a bat boy with the Bay Sox in 16, and I met him down there. And I ran into him and his family at a bar in San Diego after an Orioles-Padres game out there.
Okay.
And I wasn't going to bother him. He was with his family, his parents, brothers, and he came over to me. I was sitting at the bar and was like, "Hey man, like what's up? How's it going?"
That's
and
wild.
we had like a 10-minute conversation. All time nice dude. We DM
great.
on Instagram once in a while. I wish nothing but the best for him, but I was not aware of those Dan Clark tweets.
Yeah,
I had him muted for years.
He put out one over and over. Like, this was probably 18, 17, when Yacobonis was kind of first coming up a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it was those years. And he said, what does Jimmy Yacobonis have to do to get a call up? And it became like a meme for like a year and a half where people would talk about it. Because it's Dan Clark.
How connected I am on Orioles Twitter, I can't believe I'm not aware of this.
I'll try to find it for you. I think I might have blocked Dan Clark a while ago. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think most of us have.
To move on, I want to ask you, the lineup, we talked about it a little bit. There's 2 things I'm going to cover to finish out this segment. Number 1, what's your concern level between Santander and Hayes? They've both been really bad since the All-Star break. This is no surprise for Austin Hayes. This is what he does. He gets hot for a while. Usually it's for a half of the season, whether it's before the All-Star break or after, and then he does nothing for the other half. Is that just the regular trend with him right now? And then what's your concern look like for Anthony Santander? This is a colder stretch than we've seen from him in a long time, and it's I would say the concern level's pretty high for me at the moment with the way he's looked.
It is for me too. And I feel bad saying that. Austin Hayes was a dog at the beginning of the excuse me. Still happens, 28 years old. Austin Hayes was very good at the beginning of the year. Well deserving of his all-star selection. Was, Stan mentioned he was leading the league in batting average. He climbed above, I think it was Bo Bichette for a few games there back in May and June. It happened last year. He hits for the cycle against the Nationals. Starts to get a little bit banged up, and then falls off. And I can point to an instance earlier this season. He was doing really well. I don't remember where it was, what series it was, but he was trying to make a play along the left field wall and slid and hit the wall and came up and was hobbling a little bit. And
about a month ago, right?
Yeah. And ever since then, he hasn't looked the same. Santander has always been a relatively streaky. He's not, Chris Davis streaky.
No.
But he's a streaky player. In terms of, his not just his overall numbers, but his eye at the plate. It seems like he goes through times where he's really locked in and he's having really good, 8, 9, 10 pitch at bats. And then other times he's swinging at the first couple pitches and popping them up or grounding them out. And he just has not looked like himself recently.
No.
It's concerning because a guy like Santander, with his profile, he has to be able to draw the occasional walk to stay productive. And he hasn't been doing that lately. He hasn't been hitting the ball exceptionally well. My level of concern with those two is it's pretty high.
Yeah.
If they both continue to struggle into September and into the playoffs, it's bad news for this offense.
Right. I look at it as this. It's not concerning for next year. I'm not worried about that. That's not what we mean. We mean that when they get to the playoffs, it's going to be a concern. If you have 2 dead spots in your lineup, which they've kind of been. I hate to say that. And like you said, Austin Hayes was a .315 hitter going into the All-Star game. He was great.
Yeah.
But right now, it hasn't worked for him. And Colton Cowser's back down. Ryan McKenna probably will make another cameo because he doesn't. You can't escape him, as they say about Cedric Mullins. You can't escape Ryan McKenna
can't
either.
Escape Ryan.
You really can't, because Brandon Hyde seems to be infatuated with the way he plays. So that's I guess good for Ryan McKenna. But my final question for you here is, you have a Lamar meter behind you, and I don't know if you were aware of what that was, but it was the percent chance that Lamar Jackson would play for the team in 2023. What's your percent chance that Jackson Holiday makes an appearance for the Orioles this year?
Should I use the Lamar?
You can do whatever you'd like.
Lamar-ometer?
You can do whatever you'd like. You're putting it at 0. Wow.
That's about 1.2.
Oh, well, okay, 1.2.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's a little above the 0 line. I don't see it happening. I think the Orioles infield. I think if we see another infielder get called up, it's going to be Joey Ortiz, and if it's not Joey Ortiz, it's going to be Connor Norby.
Okay.
I don't think we see Holiday yet. Now, if we were still starting Jorge Mateo at shortstop every day, and Gunnar Henderson was your third baseman, and Jordan Westberg was out of the picture, Adam Frazier was out of the picture, Ramon Arias was out of the picture, I'm probably clamoring for Jackson Holiday.
Yeah.
But right now, I don't see any reason to rush him. I do think he'll get the bump up to AAA, but I'm not. I don't think it's likely to be seen this year.
It's been a lot more media coverage than I ever could have predicted on this topic. Like, ever could have predicted. It's been actually legitimately talked about, where there are people within real organizations who are saying, and they're not just fans, they're saying this is a possibility. Shocking to me, but I'm with you. I'm at like 1.2%.
Yeah.
it's. I'm not going to say it's not happening, but I'm just not going to say.
That's why I left it just barely above the 0.
Fair enough.
But I don't see it happening. This is not a situation where the Orioles need him.
They don't
honestly.
desperately need him. I'm not clamoring for it. Like I was clamoring for Gunnar Henderson last year.
Yeah.
I was clamoring for Adley Rutschman last year. I'm not clamoring right now for him because I think they have good options, and I think what they have is working, at least for now.
I agree. Yeah, Westberg has been excellent. Gunner's not going to go anywhere, barring an injury. I mean, you're keeping Mateo on the roster to play maybe a Terrence Gore type role in the playoffs. I know I've said that a couple times before, but there's value in that. Adam Frazier's not going anywhere. He's been hitting well lately. Ramon Arias won a Gold Glove last year. He's not going anywhere. That's 5 guys, now not counting your first baseman, who are already on the roster.
No doubt.
Infield.
No doubt.
So, I think we could see a return of Joey Ortiz at some point. I love Joey Ortiz. I think Norby would be next in line. I don't see Holiday this year.
I'm totally with you. Now we're going to catch a third break. When we come back, we'll close things out here on the Bat-Around.
America's biggest bike race returns to Maryland Sunday, September 3rd as 120 of the world's best cyclists race the Maryland Cycling Classic presented by United Healthcare. Come enjoy the free fan zones and festival with interactives, food, and drink beginning at noon. Then see the exciting race conclusion from 3 to 5 p.m. in the Inner Harbor. Come be loud, be proud, and let the world hear you. For more information, go to marylandcyclingclassic.us.
It's game on every day at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland. Here, you are in on every play with 100-foot screens at Sports and Social, the best table games action, and FanDuel Sportsbook, all just steps away. The best bar bites and drinks to indulgent steaks and curated cocktails. Your game day only gets better when matched up with Live's distinguished dining options. Late game? No problem. Our luxury hotel awaits. Live Casino and Hotel Maryland is the place to be on game day and every day. For more information, visit www.maryland.livecasinohotel.com. At Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Catch that festival feeling in Charm City. Everywhere you go, you'll find exciting entertainment, delicious eats, and endless summertime fun. Cheer on the O's at Camden Yards, pick crabs by the waterfront, beat the heat inside a world-class museum, and make memories that will last a lifetime. Go to baltimore.org for more information and to plan your visit.
Maryland drivers, did you know you can save up to 77% on tolls with an Easy Pass Maryland discount plan? That's right, 77%. It's never been easier. Pick the plan that's right for you at driveezmd.com. We'll keep you moving.
It's another exciting weekend of affordable family fun at Prince George's Stadium with the Bowie Bay Sox. It's the return of Grateful Dead Night on Friday the 18th. A special t-shirt package is available. Back-to-back fireworks carry on to Saturday the 19th with our Baytoberfest. Get some beer specials while you enjoy the game. And get here early on Sunday for a pregame Meet the Team autograph session. Get your tickets now by calling 301-805-6000 or anytime online at baysox.com. The Bowie Bay Sox. Let us be your 9-inning vacation.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
It's a Maryland thing you wouldn't understand.
Where the waves meet the shore, you will find Dorchester County. Hi, this is Jimmy Charles. When I think of Maryland, I think Dorchester County on the Eastern Shore where it's open for making memories. Dorchester County, it's a Maryland thing. For more info, visit www.visitdorchester.org.
It's a Maryland thing. Hell yeah. It's a Maryland thing. Hell yeah.
The latest edition of PressBox is available now. On the cover, Bo Smolka dives into what's next for Lamar Jackson after receiving one of the biggest contracts in football history. Is Lamar ready to take the Ravens to the next level, now with a new offensive coordinator and new wide receivers? Also inside, we look at what new football coaches Brian Newberry and Pete Shinnick bring to Navy and Towson, respectively. And we meet players from the college football and soccer programs around the state. PressBox is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores. And you can always find the entire edition as well as the best daily coverage of the O's, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Welcome back to the Bat Around. We're here in the third hour and just about to close things out. But before we let you go, PressBox is Glenn Clark Radio. It's the definitive place to find the best daily discussion of Baltimore sports. Watch every weekday from 10 to noon at youtube.com/PressBoxOnline or facebook.com/PressBoxSports or listen at PressBoxOnline.com/radio with podcasts available on iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts because you never know who might pop up on GCR. This week, the guy's caught up with former Ravens defensive coordinator Chuck Pagano, 1983 Orioles World Series hero Disco Dan Ford, and Navy football coach Brian Newberry. You can find those interviews and more right now in the Glenn Clark Radio Week in Review feature at PressBoxOnline.com. Now, I told Ryan in the break that I've made an executive decision since I guess I get to be the executive decision maker, as Paul always likes to.
Not me.
Paul always likes to say that on the show, so I'm going to use it too. I'm not going to do Take the Rake without Paul, because Paul loves Take the Rake. This is probably one of his favorite parts of the show, and I feel like with him not here and with him having a family issue that I'm not going to bother him. I'm not going to call him or text him and ask him when he's got more important things to worry about. So with Paul not here, I think we're going to skip Take the Rake, and what we're going to do is we're going to have the stats from last week. Instead of being a 1-stat week, we're going to do a 2-stat week. I guess that makes sense. That doesn't really make sense. We're gonna do. We're gonna do 2 weeks of the batter round. That's Take the Rake. Excuse me.
Sure.
My round. I'm struggling here. We're going to do 2 weeks of Take the Rake, and whatever the numbers are at the end of next week's show, that's what we're going to go off of. So
I think that's fair.
Unfortunately, Ryan, you can pick a guy if you'd like. I mean, I'd be happy to let you pick a guy. We can adjust the numbers if you'd like to do that.
Prorate it a little bit?
Yeah, so we can just add in the numbers from last week and say you picked them last week. I'm completely fine with that. I'm sure Paul wouldn't care as well, because Paul always says you're a part of the show. So
I also don't know who was picked last week.
Well, I'm going to tell you. So
okay.
I took Ryan Mountcastle.
Okay.
Brent took... It was Brent Harris from WBAL. He took Jordan Westberg, and then Paul took Cedric Mullins. So you have Gunnar Henderson available, you have Adley Rutschman available, a number of guys. Ryan Mountcastle, though, who's probably, I think, would have won if we had done this.
Well, Toronto comes to town this week, so
Toronto does come.
You got a shot.
Yeah.
Blue Jays won against the Rockies, finished up against the A's. Give me Adley. Take Adley.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever taken Adley on the show. I don't like going chalk.
We used to take, like, every week. It'd be earlier in the season. It would be Henderson and Rutschman, every week. But you're gonna add it in, so we'll just do that. I'll let Paul know of the decision we made, and it'll make sense. And again, I don't want to do it without him, because he truly loves this part of the show. So and he is the reigning 2-time champion, by the way, and he loves to remind me of that. So he'll be happy to see that we didn't pick without him, so he doesn't lose a week in the standings. Ryan, thank you so much for being here. How can people follow you? What do you got going on right now?
Oh, man, I'm on Twitter at RyeGuyBlake and at Orioles fan Ryan. I have a podcast with Paul. We haven't done it in a while.
Okay.
Had a lot going on in my personal life, planning a wedding, new jobs, bunch of stuff. But that podcast will be back. It's called Give That Fan a Podcast. You can find it anywhere you get your podcasts, also on UtahStreetReport.com and YouTube. Other than that, just hanging out, man.
Well, thanks for filling in. Saturdays are tough, and you came in on very last minute's notice. I apologize to everyone about the tech issues. Again, this was a complete last minute change, so we did the best we could today, and unfortunately we couldn't fix some of them that are probably not really on our end and out of our control. So thanks for everyone for being patient with us and staying with us.
Did you not want to talk Ravens?
Oh, we can talk Ravens if you like.
I just didn't want.
Sure.
I don't know the game of football the way I know, like the intricacies of football the way I do baseball.
We can do 5 minutes on the Ravens. I got no problem with that.
I'm fine to give some opinions.
Sure.
I just don't I don't know schemes. You know what I mean?
Ravens go into Washington on Monday night. I will be there. My second straight. I went to last week's preseason game.
Nice.
And then my girlfriend's dad bought us tickets to Monday's game. So I guess if you're into preseason, you're living the life right now. I love any football I can get. I'm just about as big into football as I am at baseball. I didn't try to work in it or anything like I did with baseball, but it's still one of my favorite things in life is football and Ravens football. So I'm excited to see what the Commanders have, and I do want to see a little more of Sam Howell now that he is the starting quarterback for the Commanders. And I still hate the name. Still hate the stadium. Not looking forward to being in FedEx Field on Monday night. But
terrible stadium. They should go back to the football team. Washington football team was perfect.
Who are give me 3 guys that you're interested in. You don't have to do this. You can give me one guy.
I'll do it. I'll try.
Give me 3 guys you're really interested in watching on Monday night, and I'll give you my 3 as well.
Okay. Zay Flowers is one for me for
Absolutely,
sure.
Definitely.
I think he's going to have a more expanded role. I think he only had 1 touch in the Eagles game.
He had 1 touch, but an incredible juke move. Got past a guy. Yeah. 1 touch.
So give me Zay Flowers.
Okay.
I think got to be Clowney. I don't know if he's going to play. He hasn't practiced with the Ravens yet.
I would think he would, because it's hard to get a guy ready for week 1 if he doesn't play or practice at all before that. I would have to think he gets at least a run. And I think Ojabo played last week. So if you're counting on Ojabo as a starter and Clowney as another starter, then I would assume he'd play.
Okay, so Zay Flowers, Clowney.
Okay.
And with the injury to Marlon Humphrey, I'm really interested to see how Brandon Stevens because I don't know what the Ravens are planning on doing with him in terms of his role.
Yeah.
I know he's been kind of slot corner, a little bit of safety.
Okay.
But aside from that, I think we need a guy like him to step up.
Okay.
If we're going to be without Marlon for 2 weeks of the season, even maybe more than that.
Yeah.
So the cornerback group as a whole, but specifically Brandon Stevens.
Okay. Keaton Mitchell's my number one guy. I
don't know who that is.
Okay, he's the running back undrafted out of ECU.
Okay.
And if you saw him last week, I don't know if you got to catch the game or not, but the best speed on the team. He's faster than Lamar. He's faster than Zay Flowers. This kid is the fastest guy on this team, and he's unbelievably quick. I'm not sure what he looks like as a pass catcher. I saw him drop a pass at practice this week. They live streamed them. I watched them because I'm a weirdo. Glenn Clark would absolutely yell at me for watching Ravens practices online, but I did that anyway because he has before. I told him I one time went to a practice and he just ambushed me on the show for about an hour for going to a Ravens practice because he's not a fan. Anyway, I respect his opinion on that.
Yeah,
but sure. Keaton Mitchell, incredibly quick, smaller guy, kind of like that Justice Hill type of guy, Darren Sproles type of guy, the little guy who probably is going to have a role in special teams. I really want him to make the team. Had a great game last week. Want to see him again. Keaton Mitchell, Ronald Darby is another guy. Ronald Darby comes in probably as cornerback 1 for week 1, which is incredibly scary. So I want to see a lot of that. And then I want to see Kayvon Seymour. I think Seymour is better than Stevens. I think he is by a little bit. I truly have a thing against Brandon Stevens. I just don't think he's very good.
No, I don't either.
Which
is why I'm curious to see how he does this week.
No, that's fair, and I didn't want to replicate. So Ronald Darby and Kayvon Seymour are two corners that are going to be your starters week 1. And most likely, unless Rocky Singh comes back, which is possible. But I think that's more than likely the scenario with Marlon Humphrey out for 2 or 3 weeks. Those are the guys that I really want to focus on, and hopefully they can cover the Commanders' wide receivers, because certainly when it comes to Jamar Chase in week 2 and the Bengals, it's going to be a lot more of a handful.
Yeah.
So I'm a little worried. I'm a little scared. I think the Ravens really need to figure out corner.
Yeah. I'm also curious to see Ojabo and Odafe-Owe.
No doubt.
And how they
definitely.
do behind Clowney. I think that'll tell a lot.
I really want to see Odell play. I'm so excited to have Odell as a Raven.
Me too.
I hope I'm not getting too excited and then Odell goes down in week 1 with an injury. That would be the worst thing ever.
And Bateman's back at practice too.
Bateman's back at practice, yeah.
The offense could be nasty.
I mean, they have legitimately 4 great wide receivers.
Are you including Andrews in that?
No, I'm saying Nelson Aguilar in that. I think Nelson Aguilar is a very viable starting receiver option.
Interesting.
The more I've seen of him, and I watched a little bit of him the past few years with the Eagles and all the other, he's been around. Patriots, he's been on at this point. He's been around, and I always think he's a pretty solid receiver. Doesn't have the best hands, but he's very athletic and gets open, and that's what the Ravens need.
I'm very much fine with Aguilar as a 3 or a 4.
Yeah.
But I'm terrified. I should say I would be terrified if injuries force us into a situation like where Kamar Aiken, wide receiver 1.
Yeah, wide receiver 1 would be a different story.
Yeah.
I think he's a starting receiver, but more as like a wide receiver 3.
He's a good complimentary guy.
Yes, good complimentary guy, but he's not Odell and he's not Zay Flowers. Right. Those guys are your 2 starters. Rashad Bateman's going to play a lot, and I think him and Odell are kind of going to switch off roles, probably be on the outside, and then maybe Zay Flowers plays a little slot. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but we'll definitely see what happens here in the next few weeks. And let's just hope the Ravens start off week 1 with a win against the Texans, go against the Bengals week 2. That's going to be tough. They've got to figure corner out. That's my number 1 priority.
Yeah.
Anything else you have, Ryan? Final thoughts?
Zay Flowers, Monday night, 75 yards and a touchdown.
Oh, good. All right. I hope that happens with Josh Johnson as the quarterback. Tyler Huntley will not play. So
I didn't know that.
Ryan, once again, thank you so much for being here. Last minute notice. Great time doing the show with you as always. And yeah, let's hope that you unfortunately do not have to fill in for us any more weeks as things are okay with Paul's family. We hope. And I really thank you for coming in.
Happy to do it.
And until next week.
I was going to be here anyway. But
yeah, you're going to be here anyway for the second hour. But
whole thing.
And good luck with what we got going on today. I know you got a pretty significant life thing going on today, so good luck with that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Until next week, see ya.